I just wanted to start off with a little welcome, and maybe for those of you who aren't as familiar with what GreenSeam does, a little overview of what we do, and then kind of why we're doing this event. So what is GreenSeam? We're an economic development organization serving food and agriculture in southern Minnesota and northern Iowa. And our definition of food and ag is pretty expansive because, of course, it's the producers, but it's also the processors, the manufacturers, the professional services, the logistics providers, the educators, and every piece of that ecosystem that goes into making this really robust industry cluster, as we call it, in southern Minnesota that really stands out per our mission as the world-class food and agribusiness epicenter. So this is a really, everything that we're used to and that we drove past on the way here today, the grain bins and the fields almost ready for harvest, that's the water we swim in, but it's really special on a global scale. So with our economic development work, we have 4 focus areas and committees corresponding with each one. So today, the committee that's brought this event to you is our talent committee. Formerly, and this program was originally created by our business retention expansion committee. But yeah, we have a few talent committee members here today. We have Nathan Hannell, we have Leah Bridger, we have Kelsey Woods Nord, who's also a board member for GreenSeam. So we're grateful for their kind of getting this event off the ground and getting the ideas behind it turned into a reality. We also focus on, we have entrepreneur support, business attraction for food and ag, that regional branding of really coining this term of, this is the GreenSeam region that we're in. The same way you'd say, if you're in Palo Alto, I'm in the Silicon Valley, or if you're in some neighborhoods of New York, I'm on Wall Street, you're in the GreenSeam. All right, so why are we doing this event today? We have an extremely productive workforce here in southern Minnesota. And one of the main inhibitors right now of businesses being able to continue growing is that we've maximized it. So what we look to, GreenSeam is saying one of our best bets is going to be to look outside of our borders. But there's some real and maybe some also misconceived challenges to being able to welcome international professionals into the region and into our workplaces. So here, we want to lower some of those perceived barriers for what are maybe the misconceptions and how, what can businesses do to really be able to invest in this asset, and then also be able to provide some real follow-up support through our Global Workforce Program that's received funding from the Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development. So our director, Sam Ziegler, is going to share more about that program with you afterward. But for now, I'll turn it over to Ann Johnson, our gracious host and director of the Redwood Area Chamber and Tourism.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Redwood area. I am thrilled to have you here. As Holly said, I'm Ann Johnson, Executive Director of Redwood Area Chamber and the Redwood Area Chamber Ag Committee. And it's a pleasure to welcome you to the beautiful Redwood Area Community Center for this important meeting today. We absolutely applaud the efforts of our friends and partners at GreenSeam for their work to elevate our region as the world-class food and agribusiness epicenter. Our Redwood Area Chamber Ag Committee is proud to be a dedicated partner in this effort, sharing in the vision to educate and advocate for a strong future for agriculture in our local communities. And I just want to pause a minute and give a special shout out to my favorite farmer right there, Joel Mathwitz. Raise your hand. Joel taught me half of everything I know about agriculture, the other half, Bruce Tiffany. 2 names in the Redwood area in agriculture that you should know. If you don't know Joel Mathwitz, I challenge you to get to know him today. So a couple of housekeeping items for us. As you walked into the building, if you would have kept going, there are bathrooms right around this corner and down the hallway a little bit. The Wi-Fi, you just need a guest Wi-Fi, no password needed. So have at it, except of course if someone is speaking, then we want your full, okay, I was a 10th grade English teacher in a previous life, so there is no surfing the internet during this meeting. But that's no password needed. And one last thing, we are very excited for another upcoming workforce event that I'd like you to mark your calendars with. Mark them for October 4th for Building Inclusive Workplaces, Innovative Workforce Solutions in Southwest Minnesota. We have flyers on the way out, so make sure you grab one and post it at your workplace and mark October 4th as an important date to come together in another partnership event, this time with 4 area Southwest chambers, and of course our friends from the Southwest Minnesota Private Industry Council. Carrie, wave your hand. Carrie's here too. You should get to know her. She's a rock star. And the Southwest Initiative Foundation. So the flyers are out on the table. Make sure you take them because we really believe that collaboration is the key to our success, particularly like this event is demonstrating, to our success in agriculture. So, okay, fun fact. About a week ago, we had a pro wrestling event in the school community center. Is this not the bomb or what? This is a great place. So in total pro wrestling fashion, let's get everyone ready for a 4-hour meeting because I know what you're thinking. You saw 4 hours on the agenda and you're like, really? 4 hours? Are we really going to be here? I mean, they bribed us with meat and cheese, but are we really going to have fun for 4 hours? And you should say, yes, yes we are. This is going to be a fun event. So in pro wrestling fashion, are you ready for an afternoon full of learning and networking? Let's hear it! Yeah. Not enough, let's hear it again! Yeah. Go agriculture, right? Or whatever you want to say. And with that, I'll give it back to Holly in the center ring here.
Thank you, Anne. And yes, mark your calendars for that October event. That's going to be an excellent kind of synergizing set of content with what we're going to talk about today too. So October 5th, is that right? And October 4th, yes, October 4th, mark your calendars. And there are also handouts in the middle of your table, so take a look at those. So we have refreshments in the back. Help yourself throughout the day if you need to get up and stretch your legs. We're going to be really looking at this global workforce topic from a variety of angles because it can look a lot of different ways. We're going to look at it from the international worker perspective and the international student perspective and some of maybe the area in between. So it's going to be fast moving and pretty very engaging and high energy. So we're looking forward to it. I will introduce our first speaker. I'm going to pull up my notes. Our first speaker today is Erin Schutte-Wadzinski. She is the owner and attorney of Kibu Immigration Law, PLLC, in Worthington, Minnesota. She offers legal representation to immigrants and refugees living in southwestern Minnesota. She is no stranger to the power of collaboration across schools, organizations, religious groups, and local businesses as we welcome international professionals into our region's community. So please join me in welcoming Erin to the center ring.
I think what better way to get started than have a little pop quiz. Sound like fun? Yeah. Okay. So, first question. This is true or false. It's okay if you get the answers wrong. You don't have to know the right answer. But I bet by the end of the afternoon, you will be able to go back to your colleagues and quiz them on what you learned today. So, first question, true or false? An international student's F1 visa comes with a built-in authorization to work off campus. Raise your hand if you think the answer is true. Okay. False? The answer is true. Okay. So F1 student visas come with OPT, optional practical training, and we will talk more about that. Okay. Next question. Employees must pay extra fees to be able to hire international students or graduates on this OPT, optional practical training. All right. Who thinks that's true?
Employees or employers?
Employers. So employers must pay extra fees to be able to hire international students or graduates on OPT. It's optional practical training. True? False? All right, very good, it's false. So when students carry that OPT with them, employers are able to hire those students on OPT without having to pay government fees, paying any attorneys or anything like that. And we're going to learn how that's done. Third question, last one in the pop quiz. Employers must know on day one whether they want to sponsor that F1 international student for a green card. Do employers need to know on day one that they want to sponsor their new employee for a green card? True? False? All right, you're all catching on, it's false? Okay. So we know that it's intimidating for employers to think about hiring international students because of all of the extra hurdles and red tape that they might need to go through in order to make that hire happen. But I want to talk with you today about the possibility of creating a pipeline of international talent and building an international workforce that extends into regional colleges and universities. I encourage employers who are thinking about how to tap into an international workforce by thinking about how they can build a talent pipeline with international students that are already here in Minnesota. And that's what we're going to kind of talk about, and that's the strategy that I'm hoping will make sense as we dive into these slides. So we're going to talk a little bit about international students in the United States in general. We're going to talk about new strategies for meeting labor needs. What is an F1 student visa and what does that look like? We'll talk about how the F1 student status fits into the general immigration system at large, and options for how employers can utilize this knowledge to create pathways for long-term employment. So I own Kivu Immigration Law. I'm an immigration attorney in Worthington, Minnesota. I was an initiator's fellow through the Southwest Initiative Foundation in 2020 and 2021, and that's what allowed me to launch my social enterprise law firm. And we provide low and reduced service. We provide quality legal representation at low and reduced fees, primarily for individuals and their families, but we also work with employers in helping them navigate how they can hire international workers. So we represent employers in applications for work visas, and we represent individuals in their own pathways to seek employment authorization, lawful status in the U.S., and citizenship through their own means and abilities. So when I think about talent and recruitment in this region, I can't help but think about the amazing next generation of leaders coming out of southwestern Minnesota. And we can't not look at the growing international student population when we think about the student bodies on our local colleges and university campuses. There are thousands of international students residing in southern Minnesota, calling this place home, and it's important to understand their journeys for how they got here. International students must first take English language tests in their home country to prove that they have the proficiency skills to be successful in a classroom where they're being taught English. So there are standardized tests that an international student must take when they're in high school, if they want to consider coming to the U.S. for a bachelor's degree. Next, that student needs to gain admission to an accredited college or university. And that means in their home country, they're submitting an application to study here in the United States. And if they are admitted to a college or university, then they can apply for a student visa at their home embassy, the U.S. embassy in their home country. So there's a lot of steps that a student must take before they wind up in new student orientation here in Minnesota. And thinking about all of those steps and hurdles that they have to overcome, we're looking at international students who are ambitious, who have a lot of initiative, and are successful in what they do. These international students are ingrained in them a lot of skills that we look for in candidates who are successful in our workforce. And who are international students specifically? There's 1 million of them in the United States. And while there was a downward dip during COVID, as we see with a lot of trends across the country, that number is increasing. And in the last academic school year, the United States was back up over 1 million international students. Something that's really kind of a surprising trend to me is that the increase in international students that we're seeing is actually at the graduate level. So these are master's students, they're PhD students. They might be students who already studied in the United States for their bachelor's degree, but are continuing onward with their master's degree or PhD. But we're seeing a rise in the number of graduate level international students over the past few years. And this slide here comes out of a study from the GreenSeam State of Ag, when GreenSeam polled employers on how they feel about hiring international students at their company. Nearly half of the employers who responded to this question said that they have not considered hiring international student interns, but over 85% of those who responded said that they would at least consider doing it if they had human resources or legal expertise to help them navigate the process. So this tells me that this is like an information issue. It's not really knowing how to navigate it, but it's not an unwillingness. People aren't averse to the idea of hiring international students, they just don't know how to do it. And so this is my goal at Kivu Immigration Law, and with my colleague Garrett Leifring, who's here today, who's the Associate Director of Employer Relations. We work with employers to just help them navigate this process. So part of understanding the process is understanding the lifespan of an F1 student visa. There are a few different types of visas that an international student can come and study in the United States, but the F1 student visa is the most common type. So we're going to focus on that today. Another type of visa is called a J1 visa. Those visas are typically for high-level researchers. And one thing to know about a J1, just to put in the back of your mind, is that those students have an obligation to return to their home country after their studies for at least 2 years before they would be able to get permanent residency in the United States. F1 student visa holders don't have that obligation, and the vast majority of international students studying on an F1 are very, very interested in remaining in the United States to work if that opportunity presents itself. So this arrow here with the graduation cap signifies when a student completes their degree. But you'll notice that their F1 visa, their F1 status does not expire on their day of graduation. Instead, the F1 status allows a student to get their foot in the door and gain some experience working in the United States while they maintain that F1 status. So the red part represents their time of study, time as a full-time student in the United States. And the CPT circle is opportunities for students to gain some internship experience while they are a student, and that as long as that internship is tied to their program of study. Essentially, that work experience is something that's like built into a syllabus. If it's built into a syllabus, it can qualify for CPT, and typically that's just a part-time internship that is tied to a specific course. The blue section is that optional practical training that all of you whizzes got correct on the pop quiz. And there's a shaded region of purple because sometimes international students will use some of their OPT during the summer times when they're not studying. They'll want a summer internship, and the way they can have a summer internship off campus is to use their OPT. Typically, there's 12 months of optional practical training that is built into an F1 visa. So if somebody uses 2 months of OPT for a summer internship, that's full time, 10 months of OPT will remain. This green section for STEM OPT is a potential 24 additional months of work authorization for someone on an F1 student visa who majored in a STEM-related field. And we'll talk about what exactly or who exactly qualifies for STEM OPT. But looking at the lifespan of this, you can do the math. Someone can be in the United States for maybe up to 7 years on F1 status. And 3 of those years potentially being with one employer, working full-time, with that employer hiring them just as they would an American citizen. So let's dive into CPT a little bit. CPT is that orange circle on the previous slide, where international students often get their very first experience in the American workforce through CPT. And this is work experience that is through a specific course and a work arrangement where the university and an employer form an agreement to take the student for some type of hands-on outside of the classroom learning. For employers who are interested in like getting your early foot in the door with international students, I encourage you to reach out to your local or regional university and speak to maybe a department chair in the field of study, in your industry or area of expertise, and see whether you might be able to put together some type of program for students to get like on-the-job experience in your workplace. And maybe those students could get some sort of credit or something that is tied to their syllabus and course curriculum. So it's a strategy to have an employer kind of get that competitive advantage, get some face time with international students, so that when that international student or any student, honestly, is at the point of graduation, they're going to already have that experience and recognition of your company, of your workplace, and think of you as a potential employer. So in order to hire someone on CPT, so you can pay them based on the arrangements that you have with the university. Maybe it would be only for credit, but maybe the student would get paid an hourly wage. That's something that you would determine with the university. But all you need is to have an I-20 updated, which is this like student status form to let the government know that a student is working on CPT. There's no government filing fees for CPT, so no one pays anything for a student to get work experience on CPT. OPT is this blue shaded area, but we're going to focus on the purple piece, called pre-completion OPT. So pre-completion is summer internships. That's really what pre-completion OPT is. And the amount of time that a student has a summer internship will be subtracted from the 12 months of OPT that they have included in their visa. And the employer needs to extend an offer, and a student who wants that summer internship and is using their OPT needs to apply for employment authorization. So this is where the employer is going to need to see some documentation to make sure that the student has authorization to work in the U.S. It is up to the student and the student's international office at their university to submit the proper paperwork for the student to get the work authorization and the social security card that they need to work at your company. The student is responsible for paying the government filing fee of $470 in order to get those documents. They need to have those documents in hand, in their own possession, before they can start working for an employer. So, for those of you HR professionals, you're going to see these really familiar documents here. But on the left is an EAD. It's an employment authorization document. It's a work permit. And you'll see here that there are two dates, valid from date and an expiration date. And you just need to make sure that those dates are within the window that you plan to hire the student. Because the student is only authorized to work that on the dates that this card says they're allowed to work. So for OPT, right after graduation, a student is able to work full-time for an employer for however long they have OPT left, whether that's 9 months, 10 months, 12 months, and an employer can hire that individual with the employment authorization card and the social security card. So those are the two documents that the student will use to complete an I-9 form, and those are the only two documents that an employer needs, except you do need this I-20, which is the same form that you need for CPT, just to make sure that the student has gone through the steps to alert the government that they plan to work for you, a specific employer. So your company would be listed on the student's I-20, just to make sure that everything is in line with government expectations. And that process of getting the I-20 updated is something that the student will do with their international student office, and we've got a representative from the international student office here today who can probably dive into this and explain that process much more thoroughly than I could. But for those individuals who majored in STEM, we want them to make sure that they're able to utilize this extra benefit that the government offers, STEM-related majors, which is called STEM OPT extension. And why is this important? Well, we know there's a big push for STEM. We know there's a lot of, we're seeing more and more STEM majors, but it's critical for employers here to recognize that 55% of international students major in a STEM-related field. And if you're not open as a STEM employer into tapping into international students, you're missing the mark when it comes to recruitment and talent acquisition. So what is STEM? We all have ideas of what falls into science, technology, engineering, and math, but it's the government's ideas of what STEM is that matter when it comes to STEM extension. So there is a list, so every major at every university has a code tied to its major, and it's called a CIP. And then there is a government list of CIP majors that are defined as STEM. So someone must have a degree in a major that is on the list that the government issues in order for that person to be eligible for STEM OPT. And it's mostly intuitive, but it's not always intuitive. So, for example, accounting is not a STEM-related field. Nursing is not a STEM-related field. But some communications and journalism are STEM-related because of the technology piece of it. So you really need to look at this list to make sure that the type of position you're filling, if you want to utilize STEM extension, that you're matching up your job requirements with these types of degrees that are on this list. For those of you who work at universities, I urge you to closely examine the CIPs for your majors and see which of your programs are on the fringe of being included on this list. And can small adjustments be made to the requirements of that major in order to have a CIP that coincides with this governmental list? So that way more of your international students will be able to utilize STEM OPT. It's easier said than done, but I think it's an important strategy for university administrators to consider when they want their own students to be the most competitive that they can be. For all of you employers out there, I'm sure the idea of being able to hire someone for 36 months rather than 12 months is appealing. And so if you can recruit someone who is eligible for that STEM extension, you want to take those steps in order to make that possible. So STEM OPT is an additional 24 months of employment beyond the 12 months of OPT. And in order for the employer to take advantage of the STEM OPT, one requirement that comes into play here is that the employer must be enrolled in E-Verify. So E-Verify is a system that Human Resources will use to verify the identity of job applicants and employees. It's free to use, but employers must be registered in order to maintain an employee on STEM OPT. The student, well, the international graduate at this point, will be responsible for applying for a new employment authorization card that extends the validity of their employment authorization for an additional 24 months. The total cost for that is $470 paid to the government, and it is typically the international student's financial obligation to pay that fee. Again, there is no cost to the employer to hire someone on OPT or STEM OPT or CPT or pre-OPT. Everything that we have talked about thus far carries no additional burden or cost to employers, because all of this work authorization is done through the student, their student status, and the international student office that they are affiliated with. It of course takes an employer's understanding of the system and cooperation in all of this, but it is not a financial burden for employers to hire international students who carry F1 student status, because they are authorized to gain that experience on the job in the United States because of their status here as a student. So what happens when they're done with their OPT? The international student will need to return home unless they have another route here in the United States. So gaining additional employment authorization through the employer is one route that international students and graduates can take, but it's not their only route. Sometimes those international students will get married in the United States and get married to a U.S. citizen, and their U.S. citizen spouse can petition them for permanent residency. With that will become work authorization and the ability to work anywhere they want in the United States. Others will explore humanitarian pathways to permanent residency, and we'll talk a little bit about what those entail. Things like asylum or special immigrant juvenile status or some other application pathway that's available based on a person's personal unfortunate circumstances. Other international graduates will want to go back to school. They'll want to continue their education. So those here on a bachelor's degree will re-up their F1 status so that they can get a master's degree or pursue a PhD or professional degree. And students can have multiple F1 visas or have F status multiple times. Someone who pursued OPT through their bachelor's degree and then goes back to school for their master's degree, again will have OPT with their master's program. So that again will give them opportunities to seek additional professional experience in the United States. But there are also some avenues where employers can get involved, where the employers sit in the driver's seat and say, we want this person to work for us. Now, up until this point, when you're working with an international student on OPT, you are building a pipeline. You are getting experience working with that individual, and you're gonna know 12 months or 36 months into it if that individual is someone who you want to stay on your staff long term. And it's an opportunity that employers have to gain insight and see whether that is a good fit. Because you don't want to make a big investment in someone who's not the right fit for your company. But it's low risk and low barriers to hire international students on OPT or CPT to test the waters and see if they are someone who you would want to take that next step towards sponsorship for either a temporary work visa or permanent residency. So we're going to talk about that next. We're going to talk about how if you as an employer have an international student on staff and you want to keep them, how do you keep them? It's also possible to petition foreign workers on temporary work visas or permanent residency, even if they're not international students. But these are people who probably are not already on your staff. You haven't been able to test the waters with them, and so you need to be confident in other ways that they're going to be a good fit for you. And I like the opportunity to explore and get to know someone before taking that plunge. And so talking about creating that pipeline, starting with international students who are already here, I think is just a way for employers to ease in to the idea of hiring international talent and building their own global workforce. So let's talk about the TN visa. The TN visa is a temporary work visa for Mexicans and Canadians to work in the United States for 3-year increments. These are typically Mexicans and Canadians who have bachelor's degrees or a lot of work experience that can coincide with some level of education, but maybe not quite a bachelor's degree. And this TN visa is a really great visa because they're swift and easy and quick to obtain, but they are limited in nature for who's eligible. So this program was created through NAFTA, an agreement between Canada, the United States, and Mexico. So only citizens of Canada or Mexico are eligible for a TN visa. This is where the employer would initiate the process and extend a job offer to an individual who would then either submit an application on paper for that TN visa or apply for a TN visa at their home embassy in their home country. But it's quick processing times, usually under 3 months, and it's not a lot. There's not a lot that has to be done, which is why they're one of my favorite things. To qualify, the must fall into one of these categories of occupations, and the job applicant's expertise must be demonstrated in one of these occupations as well. So it has to be a match on paper in both the job description and the person's resume. So the job applicant does need to provide copies of their diplomas, certificates, proof of their education, and proof of work experience if they don't have those college degrees. An H-1B is similar to a TN visa, but it's more expansive. So an H-1B is for citizens of any country who have a bachelor's degree or higher, who work in a specialty occupation. So it's a 3-year temporary work visa. It can be renewed once for a total of 6 years. Whereas with the TN, you can renew it in 3-year increments an unlimited number of times. So you can be on a TN for 15 or 20 or 25 years. But H-1B is intended to be for 6 years only. And an H-1B is often considered kind of a bridge visa after a student's OPT expires and before an employer is ready to take the plunge and sponsor that employee for permanent residency. An H-1B has some of the requirements stripped away about what is your intent when you are working in the United States. Do you plan to live here permanently? Do you plan to live here temporarily? With an H-1B, it doesn't matter. And spouses and children can get derivative visas off the H-1B so that spouses and children can live and study in the United States while the H-1B holder works. But the derivatives are not able to work in the United States on the derivative visa. The same is for TN holders and their derivatives. So the H-1B is a really popular type of visa, and more employers want to utilize an H-1B than what there are the number of H-1Bs available each year. So the government does limit the number of H-1Bs that they'll issue in a given year. And because there's a greater demand than the number of visas available, there's a lottery system. And typically, employers will need to enter the lottery in March of each year if they want to hire employees on an H-1B. And this can be tough because it's out of your control whether or not your company is going to be selected for an H-1B. And we're seeing that there's about a 25% selection rate overall with the visas. And so, sometimes when you have an employee who you really like and they are eligible for the STEM OPT, you might want to submit their registration for an H-1B in their first year, and again in their second year, and again in their third year if they're unsuccessful in getting selected in the lottery. So it's chance. But some companies are not required to participate in the lottery. There are employers who are considered CAP exempt, and CAP exempt employers there's an unlimited number of H-1B visas available to CAP exempt employers. And CAP exempt employers include institutions of higher education, go colleges and universities, nonprofit entities related or affiliated with institutions of higher education, such as public schools who offer PSEO or other types of agreements with their local institutions. Nonprofit research organizations, I know there's a few of you in this room today, and government research organizations. So these types of employers don't have to deal with the lottery at all. They can apply for an H-1B for one of their employers at any time of the year and know that a visa will be available as long as their employee is qualified for one. These types of applications can also move very, very quickly if an employer is CAP exempt. You can get an H-1B visa within a month if you need to move on it. So our office has worked with public schools in recent weeks and months to try and fill their teacher shortages with H-1B hires. And that is an effective strategy for finding the teachers that we need in local public schools in the region. Now, cap subject employers, you're probably thinking, well, this is not fair. I don't like this lottery. I don't want to participate in the lottery. I want to be cap exempt. Well, you can't be cap exempt if you don't fall into one of these 4 categories of employers, but you may be able to piggyback off of a cap exempt employer. And how do you do this? You partner with a cap exempt employer and say, hey, if you file an H-1B application and agree to pay the employee for 5 hours a week, I'll pay the employee the remaining 35 hours a week, and they'll work for me 35 hours a week. And as long as that arrangement is on paper and also exists in reality, I will remind you, it works. And this is how cap subject employers can create partnerships and collaborations with others in this region in order to find the talent that they need in an effective and quick way. So this means that both employers would be filing H-1B applications with the cap exempt employer being the primary applicant and the cap subject employer filing a concurrent application. Yes, you're filing 2 petitions. Yes, you're paying 2 filing fees. But it is worth it for the employers who otherwise would have to take a 25-75 risk of getting selected in the lottery 1 time per year. So say that you have this employee who is on a temporary work visa and you want to keep them, you want to elevate them, you want them to grow in your company. Then the employers really should be considering sponsoring that employee for an employment-based green card. And there are 3 kind of pathways to permanent residency under immigration law: employment-based immigration, family-based immigration, and humanitarian-based immigration. So this employment-based pathway is where the employer sits in the driver's seat, pays the costs, manages the process for the employee to get permanent residency that way. So when we talk about employment-based permanent residency, you might hear people referring to it as a green card or a sponsorship or an immigrant visa or an EB-2, EB-3, which are subcategories of this type of visa, or even an NIW, National Interest Waiver, and I'll just touch on that briefly, but all of those terms can be really wrapped up into employment-based permanent residency. So the whole process for an employer to sponsor an employee is probably going to take 3 or 4 years. And the employee must maintain lawful status that entire time while they wait for the process to slowly go through all of its steps. So this means while an employee waits for their employment-based permanent residency application to be approved, they need that H-1B, or they need their STEM OPT, or some combination of several different types of visas. Maybe they go back and get their master's degree and then their PhD and all of these things. But it's really important that the employee maintains lawful status through some route other than this. Because just because an application is pending is not going to get them work authorization. Okay? So I'm not going to dive into all of the details about what this process entails, but I want you to know the timeline around it and understand kind of at what point in the pipeline should you be considering this. It's not day 1 that you have to decide if your 18-year-old international student who is there on CPT is someone who you want to sponsor for permanent residency. But that 18-year-old might have gifts and potential that you want to explore by offering them a summer internship, offering them full-time employment upon graduation. Maybe there are trainee programs available at your company, and you want to get that competitive advantage by being front and center in all students' minds about what opportunities are available to them in their region. And when you find that perfect fit for your company, this process here is available to you in order to keep that employee long-term. By the time you get to this point in the process with an employee, there's going to be a sense of loyalty developed. And you're going to know if this process is something that you want to commit to, even if it will take 3 or 4 years. And so these types of conversations with employees can happen when you do check-ins, when you discuss professional development, when you have annual reviews with them. And you can get a feel for their sense of loyalty for the company, whether they want to stay long-term, and they might initiate it themselves. But it's important that you kind of have a sense of what the process looks like so you don't feel blindsided if and when they do initiate. So I touched on maintaining lawful presence and national interest waiver. This is a type of permanent residency through the employer track that an individual can pursue without an employer. And I mention this just because there's this little sneaky way that individuals might be able to essentially sponsor themselves for a work-based visa if they have some pretty majorly impressive credentials themselves. If they're published authors, if they are experts in their field and can prove it, then they can argue that it is in the government's interest to give them an employment-based green card. And these types of applications are, they're trying to widen the gates a little bit for people to pursue these pathways simply because pursuing it through an employer, it just seems to be taking longer and longer. It used to be 2 years, now it's 3 years, maybe 4 years. But the national interest waiver is a quicker pathway for individuals who are really high level and have a lot of expertise. So sorry for the formatting here, but we've talked about 3 different pathways, and what's important for you employers to know is that it doesn't have to end with you. Like, you might lose sleep over whether or not you want to keep someone on, in their temporary work visa or status or sponsor them. But it's a good idea that they explore other options as well to see whether they can get permanent residency on their own. And it is faster, typically, to get permanent residency through a family member if they have a family member who can sponsor them. And humanitarian options are sometimes things that students can already begin pursuing while they're a college student. So there are options available, and just to kind of have this broad scope for your information can be helpful. So typically, spouses, so U.S. citizens over 21 can sponsor their spouses, their children, their parents, and their siblings. And even permanent residents who aren't quite yet U.S. citizens have some sponsoring ability. For humanitarian pathways, so we have asylum is a really common pathway that individuals pursue in our region. So frequently, new arrivals to the United States who are fleeing violence and poverty and hardships in their home country will seek asylum here. And asylum seekers do get work authorization. 5 months after submitting an application for asylum seekers can apply for a work permit and then work anywhere in the United States. This is because the process for an asylum case to be reviewed takes so many years in the immigration system that the government has decided to issue work authorization to asylum seekers while they wait. Special immigrant juvenile status is for unmarried youth under the age of 21 who've experienced neglect, abuse, or abandonment by one or both parents. This is more common than you might imagine. And DACA, U visas, and parole in place are also avenues for people to get work authorization on their own, and then they have the freedom to work where they choose without the need for employer assistance. So how do you implement what you've learned? I think about how if you're an employer, how can you enhance relationships with institutions of higher ed so that way there's more collaboration and partnerships and visibility on campuses, so that you are front and center when students, whether they're international or domestic, are considering what they want to do during the summertime or upon graduation. And I think as employers, you want to present your company as open and willing to hire international students. You don't have to commit to sponsorship of all international students you hire, but if your job description can state that you are open to sponsorship, then that international student might consider applying at your company when they otherwise would not. And then through their OPT or through their temporary work visa, that span of time will give you, the employer, the time you need to assess whether sponsorship is the right pathway for your company. So there's a lot of options available, but what our hope today, I think, is just to kind of get your feet wet, help you feel a little stable, so that way if this is something that you want to explore further, you kind of know where the starting points are. So thank you everyone for your time, and I look forward to
Check, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
That will give you the opportunity to ask questions later on. So there's a clicker taking notes also on the back of your agendas at your tables. So if you have to remember it, if you write it down back there. Who's an expert in demystifying what as an outsider is a very, very complicated system. So thank you for breaking that down and making it digestible. Our next item today, we're going to be hearing the stories of two international students down the road at SMSU in Marshall. We're going to hear from Victoria Inafidor and Nakin Andrew. Victoria is an international transfer student from Nigeria, where she studied agriculture and economics for 3 years, focusing on crop science across a variety of crops, soil science, economics, and extension work. She transferred to SMSU last year to study agronomy and is currently interning at the University's agronomy class. I'll also introduce our second speaker, Nakin Andrew is also from Nigeria, and she will be graduating next May with a degree in biology, with a special interest in microbiology. She is currently an intern at Round Couple, studying microbiology with SMSU Microbiology Lab, and is studying the impact of essential oils and plant extracts on human wellness. So welcome to the two of you. Welcome,
coming from Nigeria, studying agriculture economics, and then moving to SMSU for the agronomy major. And basically, the whole process, getting here and also getting my internship, and how I navigated through CBT to be able to graduate next year. Okay, so I started my career in agriculture economics. So I was studying agri-economics for 3 years in Nigeria. And basically, during that time, my focus of study was crop science. So it was like a lot of crop science research. We were mostly working with yam, cassavas, and you may not know them because I get this every time. I'm talking with a professor, it's like, do you have cassava here? And it's like, no, we don't. So I quickly got used to the fact that wheat and soy were like the American flag. So. And also I did soil science, surveying, and economics and extension work. So basically my university was partnering with the Nigerian government, so we used to do extension work even as students, going to different farms and talking with farmers. And that was what I did for like 3 years. And after that, I decided that I wanted to transfer. And my mom was the one that found SMSU, and she told me, if you transfer to SMSU, it's 2 years. If you stay here, it's 2 years. It's basically the same thing. And so I decided to like transfer so like I can have like a different perspective of agriculture in another country. And I transferred to SMSU last year, but then I started the process in 2022. And through 2022, it was mostly getting my transcript, getting paperwork from my HOD. And after doing all of that, I applied for the visa, and then I went for the visa interview. Basically, I had to do English proficiency exams, SAT, I took my Acuplacer, and after doing all of that, I had about 48 credits, but then I was able to move about 30 credits to SMSU. And after my interview, I got the visa, and then I was able to transfer here. And so when I came, I realized that the American workforce needed you to somehow have experience before you could get a job after graduation. And when I realized that, I was like, okay, I need to get that experience. And the first thing that came to my mind was a summer internship. And so because the CPT requires me to wait 1 year before I can actually apply for it, I decided that, I might not have the summer internship. But luckily for me, I met Melissa from our career services, and she told me if you get an internship with SMSU, you can actually do it without the CPT. And so after she told me that, I was able to talk with my professor, and he had an internship opening up. So Minnesota Soy was sponsoring a grant for our university. And so because of that, during the summer, I could do my internship with him as an on-campus employment without actually getting the CPT. And so that was when I started my first internship, and that's me over there with my PPT, because it was the first time I was spraying, and so I had to wear all these gadgets to like do spray work in the field. And my internship experience was with my professor. He's the professor for agronomy at SMSU, and like I said earlier, because Minnesota Soy Grants was sponsoring it, I could do it as an on-campus employment, which is something that was really nice for me, because if you work with the university, just like when Erin was saying peak backing, that's kind of like what came to my mind about my internship, because Minnesota Soy was sponsoring SMSU, then I didn't have to apply for a CBT. It was basically now an on-campus employment. And my focus of the research we did was a field trial. So we're doing planting population. We were checking how different planting population will affect the yield, canopy coverage, and yield of soybeans. So most of the research was soybeans. We also did some wheat research, and also we did some corn. And during my internship, mostly what I did was reading of food crops, spraying pre- and post-emergence herbicides, and spraying of the herbicides was kind of like the cool part, because throughout my study in Nigeria, I kept hearing pre-emergence, post-emergence, 2,4-D, atrazine. Like, I was hearing these big words, and I was like, I have no idea what they do. But like, when I did my internship, I got to mix fertilizers, and my professor calls it cocktail, basically. He was like, we're about to make a cocktail, and so we're mixing different fertilizers together, and we're adding emulsion, and it was really fun. And also because I cannot drive straight, we always have to add dye inside, so like when I drive, we can see the pass I did before we go to the next part. And if you ever meet him, he would tease me about it, and he'd be like, you cannot drive straight. So we always have to add dye into like spraying all of that, and taking drone footage. So in order to do like quantitative analysis, there was a lot of drone footage that we had to take. And also I learned how to analyze with ImageJ, which was amazing, because he was like, well, if you do it well, I'll let you skip one of my classes. I was like, that's awesome. I put my body and soul to learning how to use ImageJ. And so basically, just talking about like my experience studying agriculture in Nigeria and also like getting the experience to study it here in the US, I would say it has given me like a broader perspective of farming, because the way we farm in Nigeria, in some ways it's not the same way that farming is done here in the States, especially starting with the crops, because sometimes when I go out with my advisor to like talk with different professors, I keep saying, oh, I want to work with rice, or I want to work with yams, and I want to work with cassava, and they're like, we have never done research on those plants before. So the plants are different, and I quickly got used to like soy, wheat, and potatoes. I like started learning how to work with them, and that's a picture of me over at the farm, standing there. And so the farming patterns are different. In America, it's more conventional farming. I've noticed like in America, in like a county, maybe you can have like 10 farmers. It's kind of like not the same in Nigeria. In a community, you could have close to 100 farmers, because we don't do conventional farming. So you don't have a farmer that has 500 hectares or like 700 acres of land. It's mostly like 3-4 acres, and then just more farmers. So we did a lot of subsistence farming. It wasn't conventional, and our techniques was we focused more on the pests and the insects. That was the way we, like when we think of improving agriculture, we think pests and insects. But I noticed that here, when we think of improving agriculture, it's more plant breeding. It's more focusing on the seed. How can we get the seeds to have the genetic material that they need to do well? So it was kind of new to me, because 3 years in Nigeria, only hearing about pests and diseases, and then coming over here and it's like plant breeding, plant breeding. It's like, it was a different perspective of agriculture, and also constraints. We do not have winds like that in Nigeria, but the winds here are crazy. So it's like, when I can remember like one of my first art classes here, my professor kept talking about like, oh, so what's gonna affect your farm if you're planting this? And I was saying the things that I knew, like land tenure system, because land tenure system is a big deal in Nigeria. And my classmates were like, the wind, and I'm like, what does the wind have to do with this? But I found out that there's a lot of wind like here in Minnesota, and so it plays a huge factor in farming, which we didn't have in Nigeria. And also like the technology, just like I said, there was a lot of interest in insects and pests, so we had a lot of entomology classes. I'm not even taking entomology in SMSU because it's not that big of a deal here, but in Nigeria, entomology was like part of like our biggest classes. And so basically, just that broad perspective, that's what I really like and I really appreciate about pushing myself to finish my education in the US, because now I feel like I have like more knowledge in agriculture just because it's like from 2 different countries. And also why I chose this internship was mostly hands-learning experience, because I knew that graduating I would need a resume, like a really good resume, and I needed to have that experience in there. And also I know like preparing for graduate school and plant breeding research, it's mostly field trials. So I know like most graduate school for agronomy, we mostly do field trials, we mostly do plant breeding. And so I knew that if I had that experience, it would make me more competitive. And also just understanding the lectures taught in class, because I took farm mechanization in Nigeria, and we mostly did a lot of theory. It wasn't really using the tractors. So when I came over here and I started using the tractors, I would hear the word and I would know that I know it, even though I don't know what to do with it, but I would know that like, I know this. So like, just being able to correlate what I learned in class with like field work, that was like an amazing reason why I did the internship, and just challenging myself to like new farming practice. So for my work and future right now, I'm leaning towards plant breeding research, just because most of my classes have been in there, but I'm also thinking for like after graduating to first work with like ag-related fields, food science or seed producing companies, just because plant breeding has been like, it has been what my career has narrowed into since coming to the US. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Hi. Okay, is Nankin Andrew, and I'm an international student from Nigeria also. So after high school, I took 2 gap years to kind of figure out what I want to do and also learn about the U.S. application process. And that was when I wrote my SATs and eventually applied to Southwest Minnesota State University. So yeah, I began my undergraduate degree in the fall of 2021, and I'm currently a senior at SMSU. I'll be graduating in May of 2025, which is next year, and I'll be graduating with a biology degree. So yeah, I could have decided to do my degree in Nigeria. Why did I choose the US? I think for me, one of the most important things is having those hands-on learning experience in the classroom. When I think of my lab classes here at SMSU, I'm able to work independently or in groups with others to be able to in class, in the theory aspect, being able to translate that in lab classes, that was really important to me. Also having opportunities to intern and gain work experience as an undergraduate student, because that's not so common in Nigeria. Also learning in a more diverse culture with people from different backgrounds. So I've spent 3 years at SMSU, and I think it's safe to say that I've met about students from over 10 countries, and I've been able to learn about different cultures. I've been able to learn about different belief systems, and I feel like that has given me a more rounded education. And also being exposed to more career options. So when I was in Nigeria, my career options were limited, but coming to the US, I've been able to explore more options that are open and available to me. So, well, despite all of these benefits of coming to the US, international students like myself still face some struggles or challenges when it comes to job search and internship applications. So there are lots of restrictions on applications for international students by companies. Most companies would rather hire US citizens and permanent residents, and understandably so, but then this has made internship and job search more difficult for international students. Like with these restrictions, it is just very difficult to gain experience in your field of study as an undergraduate student. Last year summer, when I was applying for internships, there were so many great options, but then one of the major requirements was you have to be a US citizen or a permanent resident, and that was really frustrating. But then coming into fall of 2024, which is this year, RALCO provided an opportunity for me to intern with them by collaborating with SMSU and also providing funding. This internship was paid through SMSU, so it also helped RALCO to eliminate the CPT requirements for them, or like the pre-OPT requirements, so they didn't have to go through any paperwork or any of that. So that's an option for any company that wants to hire international students. You can collaborate with schools to be able to provide these opportunities. So yeah, I'm currently interning with RALCO as a microbiology intern. I was working full-time during the summer, and I'll be working part-time during the school year also. I'm working hand in hand with my microbiology professor, Dr. Greenfield at SMSU, who stands in as my supervisor. I'm working with essential oils and plant extracts in order to naturally improve the health and immunity of livestock animals. And other research we've been working on throughout the summer are projects that involve plant growth and soil improvement. So yeah, this internship experience with RALCO has been able to give me the opportunity to get hands-on experience and translate the concepts that I've learned in the classroom. I have also been able to work together with professionals that are ready to provide assistance. So my future plans and possible challenges: I'll be graduating in May of 2025, and I'll be using my OPT to gain work experience before heading on to graduate school. And I'm already job searching, because to use your OPT, you need to be able to apply, I think, 90 days you need to have a job 90 days after getting your OPT. So you have to start that process early on to be able to secure your position and apply for OPT and get everything in order to remain in status. And aside from that, it has been really challenging because most companies wouldn't hire international students because of this kind of restrictions that have been set in place. But I'm hoping that we become more aware of the options that are available for us, and we're able to give international students this opportunity to just show you guys what we have and what we can offer. Thank you. just get our resumes, we are very much open to that. Thank you.
Yes.
Presentation today. We're going to actually be hearing from SMSU's Center for International Education, Dr. May. Did I bring my phone up? I keep using your formal name because I just love the way it rolls off the tongue, Dr. Moivu, but she keeps correcting me to say Mei Lee. So Mei Lee is here as the director of the center. She's an expert advocate and mentor for students from representing 30 different countries, and that's about 200 students at SMSU from other countries, and she sets them on the path for success. So welcome, Dr. Moivu.
Thank you, Holly. All right. Well, thank you everyone for inviting me and my students here today to present to you. We're all very excited to be here to learn more about you, your businesses, what you do, and also to learn more about the challenges that you have with hiring in our region here. I feel like we're sort of in the same boat. You might have heard that in higher education, we are approaching a cliff. So 2025 is what they call the enrollment cliff, where our number of college-age students population in the United States is declining. So that means more and more universities in the U.S. are competing for the same students. And what does that mean for higher education? That means we have to look globally as well. So we are looking to fill in those gaps by getting more international students to attend our universities. And I think that this conversation is ideal and in the right timing because our universities have a responsibility and also making sure that international students who come to study here have a path for their career as well. So I am delighted to be here to talk to you about the idea of hiring globally and considering taking a look at our international students. So just a little bit about what we do in the office. We work with international students with promoting international education. This is our mission. The Center for International Education at SMSU serves students from around the world and the wider campus community to promote international education and cross-cultural understanding. And that's a mouthful, but basically what it means is that we work with international student services and we work with education abroad. And that means that we do everything with international student services from recruitment, admission, orientation, helping them with their academic studies throughout the 4-year, and helping them to transition after graduation to finding jobs, finding graduate school, figuring out adulthood for them afterwards. And then on the other side, with studying abroad, also known as education abroad, we help U.S. students with being international students themselves somewhere else in the world. So the work that we do, I feel, is integral to higher education and building the professionalism and the personalities and the values for our young leaders and generations for tomorrow. We think that when they leave SMSU, we're hoping to prepare them for being engaged global citizens, global leaders beyond SMSU. So, thank you to Erin for queuing me up nicely. I know I don't have very much time. She's already talked a lot about the different visa categories, and as she can attest, there's a whole alphabet soup of different types of visas, and each one of them has visa regulations, federal regulations this thick. So for international students, it's a very broad term, but it's also very specific as well. So at universities like SMSU international students has a specific definition. They are students from different countries who had to who had to enter the United States through obtaining a international student, non-immigrant visa. And there are different categories, as Erin mentioned before. There are the F1, J1, or M1 international student visa categories. At MSU, we only have one. Our student population is fairly small compared to other universities in Minnesota, and so we only work with the F1 visa holders. The J1 are primarily for exchange students, scholars, professors, and we do have students that are on the J1 visa as well at other universities. M1 is primarily for our 2-year colleges, our trade schools, and so we don't have that at SMSU. All right, so you're probably wondering, who are the SMSU international students? Just to share with you, we have 175 F1 international students, 30 of which who are on active OPT. This means that most of them have graduated already and they are elsewhere in the United States, whether they're in Virginia, in California, or Hawaii. If they're still on active OPT under our I-20 document, they are still our responsibility, and we still need to keep track of them and make sure that they're doing okay. So we have 175. We do have 75 students that are on other visa categories. We have TPS, asylees, undocumented, different visa categories, and so there are 75 of them. Our students come from 26 different countries. We used to have 30. We have now more students from certain countries. The top countries of origin are Ethiopia, India, Nigeria, Nepal, and Taiwan. And then the top popular majors, you can see there's a lot of STEM in there. Biology, business, computer science, chemistry, data science, and psychology. Okay, so I wanted to just share with you this wonderful tool. I think those of you who are in the business sector or HR, I think that this might come handy to you. We have a professional affiliation called NAFSA. It used to stand for National Association for Foreign Student Advisors, but it's no longer true. It's just for international educators. They have come up with a wonderful tool online, and if you just go to nafsa.org and search the International Student Economic Value Tool, it'll come up very, very easily. So this tool is free and it's very easy to use, and through this tool, you can take a look at how much international students bring into the U.S. economy. So international students in 2022 to 2023, they have spent monies into the economy, invested over $40.1 billion. Nationwide, that means that they've helped to create or support over 368,000 jobs. And for every 3 international students enrolled in the United States, 1 U.S. job is created. I think that there's a handout that you all received. That's a really nice handout because it's a good breakdown of the different states, how much students bring into that state, and then the total number of international students enrolled. And you can see at the bottom here, we have surpassed the 1 million mark. The great thing about the tool is that you can also drill down to the state level. So you can generate these reports, and it's also part of that packet. So for the state of Minnesota, you can see that we have over 14,000 international students enroll throughout the state of Minnesota. That supports over 3,300 jobs, and they bring in close to $460 million to the Minnesota economy. You can even drill down to the district level. And I think SMSU is not in District 1, but for some reason NASA had calculated into District 1. So this region right here, the southern part of Minnesota here, there are 2,862 international students enrolled in this region. That supports 341 jobs, and that brings in almost $75 million to the southern region right here. Okay, so I'm sharing this with you because international students have been coming to the United States for a very long time, since the 1950s, I believe, and even before that were not really quite documented. So they have been investing in our higher education. They have been spending in our economy through their accommodations, through their rentals, through buying cars, shopping, retail, tourism, many ways that they have supported the U.S. economies through their spending. And so they've come here, they've been here for many years, as Erin shared with you, for 4 years. If they did OPT, STEM OPT, graduate studies, they would be here for a number of years already. So our students, they have studied here, they've earned a higher education degree, they're highly skilled. They have learned our history, our culture, the language, and they are poised to begin working in the U.S. workforce. So why not consider them? Why not hire them? I feel like I'm preaching to the choir, but these are just some of the reasons for hiring international students. As you can see, our wonderful students before are evidence of that. They come with different perspectives, different innovation ideas, because they have that experience growing up in a different country and a different culture and seeing what's done differently in a different place. They are highly skilled and they have the education, as I have mentioned before. Many of them come from countries where there are many different languages, and so they have that multi-language ability. They also are very culturally competent. They're adaptable, flexible, well-rounded. They also can provide businesses with global market insights. So depending on what country they're coming from, for example, with Victoria, she can share a little bit about the differences in the agricultural industry over there. If any of you are thinking about expanding your business globally, this is a great way for you to think about how you can do that. What is your global reputation, and how you can build that business growth through hiring international students. Obviously, it's access to a greater pool of talent and not limiting yourself to just our domestic students. I'm going to go over this very quickly, but on your table, there are the summary of the work options that students can do, and also our contact information at the bottom of that handout on the table. So I'm just going to go over that very quickly. On-campus employment is something that our students can do. They don't need any additional authorization paperwork from my office at all. So if it's on-campus work, meaning the payroll is through SMSU, it's on campus. We also have business entities that are located on site at SMSU, such as our dining services, our bookstores. Those are not SMSU, but because they are on site and their service is towards our students, those are considered on-campus employment as well. And so those type of jobs our students can automatically work for. The regulation states that they can work for 20 hours a week when classes are in session, and during the break time they can work more hours if they want to. Okay, so the CPT stands for Curricular Practical Training, and that's ideal for internships, volunteering, classroom projects that are paid. So the curricular part of practical training, the CPT, is that it has to be tied to their syllabus, their course. They have to earn a credit for it. So for many of the degree programs, there are specific internship classes or courses that they have to take, and it's built in already into their degree. So if you are interested in hiring students from SMSU I would encourage you to connect with those particular majors that you're interested in as well and work with their department. So with the CPT, it does require some paperwork, but the authorization comes through the international office. So the CIE, we are the ones that will be providing the authorization to the student. It will come in the form of a new I-20 document, which is one of the documents that Erin has shared. And on it, it will say that the student is authorized for CPT and the dates of when the students can begin their work employment with you. And it'll have your company's information on there, the dates and address on there. So that's what CPT is. We will be working with the department and alongside with you, the employer, if that is the route that you want to do, take with any of our students. The other option there is OPT, Optional Practical Training. And as Erin mentioned, there's 12 months to this. So that's the limit. Some students, they can do OPT before they graduate, but a lot of them will not use it because they want to use the full year after graduation. And so if they can do any CPTs or on-campus employment, they will do that instead, and then wait until after graduation to do their 1 year of full OPT. The STEM OPT, again, that allows them to do an additional 3 years on top of the regular OPT. And so for students who are graduating with STEM majors, which our 2 students here are, there are several STEM degrees at SMSU, and with that, then they can work for more time with you. So I'm glossing over things rather quickly, but if you are interested in hiring one of our students and you have questions about the paperwork or just the process, feel free to connect with me in my office and we'll be happy to walk you through any of that. Okay, so I wanted you to meet our international Mustangs just so that you can see who they are. Some pictures of who they are. So, have a vibrant group. I wanted to give a shout out to our career services. Our director of career services is here. Melissa Schulten is in the back. Can you stand? Yay! So, yes. So Melissa does a fantastic job of preparing 3 job fairs at SMSU annually. So I would encourage all of you in the room to stay connected to SMSU and connect with Melissa. We just had our part-time job and volunteer fair in August. Usually that happens during Welcome Week. And then Agricultural and Business Career Fair happens, which is our fall career fair on October 22nd. Unfortunately, it is full. There are some wait lists, but if you're interested in connecting with Melissa, I would encourage that you do. We are planning for the Spring Career Fair, which is on February 25th. It's called Mustang Meetup, Coffee and Careers. And so if you're interested in coming to SMSU to hire SMSU students, connect with Melissa. Her contact information is here. And then my contact information is there as well too for any of you who may have questions about hiring international students and the paperwork that we have. Every school does it differently. I know Mankato have a different process, Winona may have a different process. Our process is pretty simple. As Erin mentioned before, with the on-campus, you don't need to worry about that. With the OPT and the STEM OPT, those are student initiated, and the students are the ones who are paying for it. But part of those may require that you do some of the paperwork for it. So there's a training plan for the STEM OPT that we may be asking you to fill out paperwork for that. For the curricular practical training, because it's part of their credit. There are some forms that we'll be having you as the employer fill out, so there will be some paperwork along with that as well. But we'll be working with the students and we'll work with you too directly if you have any questions.
Thanks for being here today and for sharing, and I hope you get lots and lots of calls at the Career Center and the Center for International Education. All right, we're going to be pivoting our conversation just a little bit because so far we've been primarily talking from this international student perspective, but then there's this other one that Aaron spoke to, which is those who maybe didn't attend school here or just on a different status other than a student status. So our next speaker is Diane Bettine, who has a rich background in encompassing agribusiness and foreign workers, now operating as Bettine Consulting LLC and aiding farmers and small businesses with international worker recruitment, retention, financial record keeping, and a variety of operational and administrative disciplines. So welcome, Diane.
Hello, everybody. I have to say I really appreciated Aaron's talk and Maylee's, because I don't know much about the F1, but there's a lot of other visas that I've got a lot of experience with. So developing a multicultural team, what works, what we struggle with, and why it's all worth it. So attracting workers in agriculture it's difficult to say the least. Rural America has a limited talent pool, labor pool, low unemployment rates. Farming's hard, sometimes dirty work. It doesn't usually fit in a 40-hour work week. You have to work weekends. Can be a hard sell. Barn and field employees can't work remotely. And there's limited opportunities for advancement sometimes on smaller farms. And then the profitability swings. We don't set our own prices, so the wage levels can be a problem. So are any of you using J1s, H-2As, TNs, or green cards at this time? Okay. So the J1 program, and Aaron touched on it a little bit, but it's a government program, and you have to go through an agency. It's considered a cultural exchange program. It's not a work visa. You develop a training plan. You review the applications, do an online interview. This is my process for the J1s. You accept a trainee and wait for their approval at the embassy. The agency will generally charge a placement fee and a monthly fee, and the trainee is responsible for their own travel and insurance. You can have the trainees, interns normally for up to a year. There are some exceptions to that timeline, but not many. Some of them will come for a little longer than a year because they'll go attend, say, the University of Minnesota for a semester after their year with the operation. You are responsible for teaching them about agriculture. Most of the people I work with, it's teaching them about raising pigs and also giving them opportunities to learn our language and culture, because it is a cultural exchange program. It's not a work program. It's sometimes not treated that way, but that's how it's supposed to be. The biggest drawback to this program is the 1-year time frame, paired with the fact that generally, as Aaron said, the trainee cannot come back for 2 years. So this isn't a continuous employment opportunity. Once they've been gone 2 years, lots of times you can bring them back for another year, sometimes 18 months, but it's not something that's a long-term. The H-2A visa, or H-2B would be for business. This is a seasonal temporary visa. It's not very well used in pig farming because that's year-round labor. So we struggle with this one. It's a valuable visa for crop labor, seasonal trucking, maintenance, manure hauling, etc. It's, like I said, it's difficult for pork producers to utilize. It's highly monitored by the U.S. Department of Labor, and audits are not uncommon. I was in HR at LB Pork for 10 years and went through 2 H-2A audits. So it's important to follow the rules of the program because they do watch it. There is pending legislation to make this visa more available for livestock farmers, but as a lot of legislation we've seen over the years, it's held up in the mess that is our government situation at the moment. So that we're working on it. Most people use an agency to manage the H-2A paperwork and processes. It's very detailed. You can do these yourselves. It's not like the J1 where you need to go through an agency. You have to be an approved agency, but it's just easier to go through someone that's really good at doing all the paperwork. You set the time frame you want the workers in the application, but when they actually arrive depends a lot on the visa schedule in their country. You know, if they can't get in for their interview right away, you might have them set to come from February 15th to December 15th. They might not get here till March 30th, or just depending on what country you're bringing them from and how backed up things are. This visa is much more expensive than the J1 because you have to pay their travel, you have to provide housing for them, and you can't charge them for that housing. And you have to pay a designated wage. You have to go by the prevailing wage rates that are set each year. So it's a more dollar-intense visa. Beginning with this year, the Department of Labor has separated out some of the ag categories. It used to be there was one prevailing wage, and that's what you used. Now they've separated out, say, trucking in some of those and put them at a higher wage rate. So that has made that an even more expensive because a lot of crop farmers brought, you see a lot of, say, South Africans here for trucking in agriculture. And now that's at a higher wage rate. There's also additional visa fees to DHS and the placement fee and monthly fees to the agency. So it can be expensive. What's nice about the H-2A is it allows farmers to bring back former workers that they know your operation, they know your equipment, you trust them. It's definitely used a lot with crop farming. TN, and Aaron touched on TN being part of NAFTA. It's just Canada and Mexico. Most of the TNs in this area, almost all the TNs come from Mexico. They have to be professionals, bachelor's degree or equivalent, and the applicant's title must match to an occupation that's on that USCIS designated list. One of the big advantages of TN is it's good for up to 2 years. It's easily renewed. You don't need an agency to utilize a TN visa, but there are required steps and items that you need to consider, so it's good to at least start out, you know, get your feet wet by going through an agency. And then, of course, you have to be able to find candidates. So recruitment is an issue. We request a resume, set up a Skype interview, always have a recruiter to translate if needed, explain the TN visa requirements, make sure the candidate's eligible, and if the interview is acceptable, I have them send me their credential information and their passport information. And then we prepare, you have to have support letters showing what they're going to be doing, what their job duties are, that you understand the time frame and the legal requirements of the visa, and then you help them file their DS-160, which is the application for an interview. And then I also usually coach them a little bit when it comes time for their interview so that they're a little more comfortable and answer the questions in a way that's not going to get them declined. So the appointments used to be pretty quick. They've really gotten stretched out because you used to be able to go for a TN appointment at just about any embassy. They've now limited it to Mexico City, Guadalajara, and Juarez. So that stretched that timeline out on the appointments quite a bit. It seems to have it got really bad this summer. It was taking about 6 months to get an appointment at some of those embassies. It seems to be getting a little better now. And unfortunately, I think that's because the TN process has gotten much more difficult in the last year. And so I think some people have just backed off it for a little bit because so many are being declined. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. So then they go for their interview. The applicant meets with an embassy employee that decides whether or not to grant the visa. And you're kind of at the mercy of that interviewer. They might say, well, we don't have proof that this is a non-immigrant visa, which means you can't have intent. So you have, or immigrant intent, so you have to have some way to show that you plan to go back to Mexico. So maybe they'll say, well, we don't think you're gonna come back. Or they'll say your title doesn't match the occupation, that's the big one now. Or maybe the wage isn't high enough. They seem to find different reasons. But if they do get approved, then all they have to do is wait for their passport, come back, and then they can travel to the US. Now, this visa is to work for a specific company, so you can't come on a TN and then just decide, okay, I don't like working here, I'm just gonna go work down the block. You have to actually do a change of company through USCIS, and some of those can take, they were taking only a couple months, now they're taking 3-4 months to get that change of company, it seems. Because the TNs are being declined, now a lot of companies are just stealing from each other because it's so tough to get new ones. Sometimes you can get it changed at Customs and Border Patrol, but that doesn't happen very often. And there's rules and fees all along the way, but the TN visa is much easier to navigate and much less expensive than the H-2A. So what we're seeing with the TN, so they're saying, what they say happened, I'm on the National Park Producers Council Labor Security Task Force, and we've been working with the State Department to try and figure out what's going on with this visa. And they think what happened is they went from being, say, 20,000 TNs in a year to like 40,000. It just exploded. And it's not just agriculture. They use this in, different maintenance areas. There's TNs in all different industries. The automotive industry, lots of different industries and companies. So it exploded so much that they decided, oh, we must have made this too easy. So they're really being particular about that title matching the job. So we used to bring a lot of veterinarians for pig work. They had a vet degree in Mexico, not a legal veterinarian here. And then we'd bring them for animal breeder or animal scientist. Now they're declining them and saying that the veterinarian degree doesn't match that job. So we're trying to figure out, work with the State Department to figure out, why they're doing this all of a sudden, how we can fix this, because these people, they want to work, we need the workers. Some of these companies that were bringing TNs were going from like a 90 to 95% approval rate. One I spoke to yesterday, we had a call yesterday, they've had a 0% approval rate in the last few months. It's really, and I was running, previously to all this starting, I was running in that 90, 95% approval rate. Over the summer, I was at about 50, 60%, and the last month or two, it's been more like 25%. So it's definitely going to be a problem for agriculture in general, because I don't know if we don't fix this, who's gonna raise pigs in this country. Because of the things I talked about on that first slide, it's tough to get people that wanna work in the barns. If you're thinking about utilizing foreign labor on a visa, first you need to think about how that worker is going to fit into your company. You're going to need someone to help them assimilate into work and everyday life. They're coming from something that can be very different, and you can't just dump them in the barn or in the field without helping them along the way. Housing is going to need to be provided, or assistance, at least assistance locating housing. They say if it's H-2A, you have to provide housing, but with the others, you have to at least help them, because it's hard for them to find housing from Mexico. Especially difficult if they want to bring their families. As Aaron said, the families cannot work. They're not on a work visa. So if the TNs or H2s bring their families on a TD or an H4, it's great that they can have their families here, but we all know what it's like to try and live in this country on one income, especially when it's a more, blue-collar income. So it can be a struggle, but it's definitely better for their morale if they can have their families here. Transportation, when I bring a TN or a J1 or anyone in, I always make sure they have a home country driver's license, because that will make it much easier for them to get a driver's license here. Now, every state has different license laws, but in Minnesota, if they come on a home country license, then they have a home country license, license, you can get them their driver's license pretty quickly. They can drive on their home country license for 2 months, and after that they have to legally have a Minnesota license. But if they already have a home country license, then all they have to do is take the 2 tests. If they don't, then they have to practice. So it can take up to 6 months for them to get a driver's license. And it kind of depends on the situation. If you're bringing them in to, say they're gonna go work on a sow farm where they can catch rides with other people, maybe the driver's license isn't as important. At LB Pork, our guys had to drive from barn to barn to barn, so that driver's license was really important. So you have to look at each company's situation as to, you know, what's the need. But they are gonna need to get to work, they're gonna need to get groceries, they're gonna need to get to the bank. So you have to think about those kind of things if you're bringing in someone on a work visa. You'll need to get them their social security number if it's their first work visa in the U.S. Possibly assist with getting a bank account, and then medical care. It's a very different situation here than the majority of countries we're bringing people in from. So I always found that they needed a little bit of coaching on how to navigate our medical system, insurance, HSAs, all of those things. You know, be prepared to do a little bit of hand-holding in those areas. Like I said, I'm on the National Labor Security Task Force. We're working with the State Department to try and figure out the TN situation, and also talking to legislators about the year-round H-2A visa. Now, if you're not agriculture, then there's the H-2B, but it's the same kind of thing. It's temporary, seasonal work. But it could be a good option for us if we would get it through to have it as year-round. So what works on having foreign labor? They're a reliable workforce. They show up to work every day, rarely call in sick, very few no-shows. At LB, I always had to tell them, you can't work so many hours. It's called overtime, and so that's kind of refreshing in that with a lot of workers, it's like, well, they need weekends off for this or that. Well, pigs eat every day. So that was always a very good aspect to our foreign labor. The J1 program allows you to bring young people from all around the world. The TNs, it's just Mexico and Canada. J1s, we had 20, as of my last count at LB, we had 26 countries, 6 continents. It's just a lot of fun to learn their cultures and teach them about our culture. And even though they're only here for 1 year, at least it's planned turnover. So our turnover was still pretty high because we were rotating them through, but once you get a system for it, you know, you just have them overlapping and it's planned. It's not that, you know, Johnny just, you know, didn't show up for work and disappeared after 2 weeks and you got to train somebody else new in anyway. So works rather well. And then again, the TN program is fairly easy to use when it's working how it's supposed to, and there are many willing participants that they want to come here. What we struggled with, embassy issues in politics. It seems like in my 10 years at LB Pork, there was always some kind of an issue with one of the visas. There was always something political happening. You know, and of course during COVID, almost all of them were shut down. The different embassies, you know, we utilize a lot of Filipinos. The politics with the Philippines, sometimes you can get them in, sometimes you can't. We used to use a lot of Ukrainians. Of course, now you can't get anyone between 16 and 60 from the Ukraine that's male because they are in the army. So there's lots of different things that affect getting different workers in. Getting back the good ones, you find somebody you really like, and if they're on a J1, you send them home, and you can't get them back again for 2 years. So that's a problem. And right now, what's going to be a struggle, like I said, companies are stealing from each other when it comes to the TNs because of change of status, change of company. those things are going through pretty quickly, and where they're not being denied. I shouldn't say they're quick, they're not being denied like going into the embassies in Mexico are. So people are stealing from each other. So that's gonna make keeping those workers harder than what it used to be. Housing I spoke about, and housing is kind of two different, a double-edged sword. Either you have to help them get housing or you have to provide housing. And we had, at LV, we had 3 different houses that we had 4 to 6 guys in each one. So then you were dealing with, well, you've got the neat freaks and you've got the slobs and you've got the people in between and all the different drama. Any of you that went to college and lived with roommates, you know what that's like. Well, these people are living together and working together, so it can be a challenge, but you know, it's just goes with the flow. Language, we always require them to learn English. Because we have so many different cultures, so many different countries at LV, we always said you have to learn English. Now, it doesn't always work that way in some of the ag companies, because if you have a sow farm where you have a manager that is bilingual, it's not always required. But we just found that, and so I tell them that before they come, but language is easier for some to learn than others, and some want to learn more than others, and so that is one of the challenges that we've had, is just making sure that they're practicing and learning English. Again, the families, the fact that they can't work. If there was one thing that I really think they should fix, it's not allowing the spouses and dependents to work while they're here, because it makes it so that they don't become a part of the community like they would if they could work. It makes the spouses and the kids, they learn English fast, but those spouses that are at home all day, they can't work, they don't learn the language like they would if they could be out in the community. Plus, just the benefits of that additional income. I mean, you think about one of the big hurdles to international workforces in the communities is people think that they're living off the government and da-da-da. Well, you know, I think that that's very little that's happening, but it does happen when it comes to family insurance and those kind of things. Because if you're living on one income, who can afford to fully insure your whole family? And most of them are under those income limits, so that they are getting health care. So if you could allow the spouses to work, it would really help with those situations. And then green cards. And Aaron touched some on the green cards. So if we talk about green cards, so they're expensive and time consuming, but the attorney fees, I've gotten green cards for 10 workers or in process of 10, 12 workers, and it started out back 10 years ago, they were running about $8,000 total. The last few have been more like $15,000 total by the time you add up, if you do premium processing, and it's just, there's lots of different things you can do to either speed it up, make it cheaper, or faster, not both. And just the premium processing is $2,500 alone. So I think that went up. Somewhere in that range. And that's just for the employee. The dependents are on top of that. So you can ask the employee to pay for a portion of it, but you're not allowed to charge them the costs in the first 2 stages of the process that Aaron showed on the screen. The employer has to pay those costs. And that's generally gonna run at least $3,000. Time consuming, depending on what country the employee is from and what class of worker you file them under, you're more than likely talking at least 2 years and could be more than 5 years. I have 2 Filipinos sitting in the Philippines right now waiting for their green card. We started their process in November of 2019. So it's very frustrating. They're great workers, we want them back, but because their work authorization had ran out, they had to go back, and they couldn't, once that they their non-immigrant visa runs out, if you're filing for immigrant intent, technically, you can't get those non-immigrant visas. So I think some sometimes get by with it, but there is question, you know, do you have any immigrant intent? So they can't come back on the TN or the H-2A if you have immigrant intent. So it's not as hard with the TN, because you can, if you've decided you like a TN, they're here for 3 years, you file for their extension of 3 years, and then you start the green card right then. And then you've got a chance to get their work authorization before that timeline runs out. But with a J1 or an H2, you know, you're talking 1 year, 10-month time frames, you're never gonna get it done in time. So they're gonna end up completing that green card in their home country, which is even makes it a longer process. If they are in the U.S. and they get to a certain point in the process, they can't leave, or it jeopardizes their green card, but their work authorization might run out, so they can't leave and they can't work legally. So there's a lot to think about timing-wise if you're thinking about getting somebody a green card. And I think that's the important part of the message. It's not just, okay, let's do this. You have to think about the timing. Why do it? It allows you to keep excellent workers, allows their spouses and family members to work, thereby helping them achieve a better life if they file for their dependents, which almost all of them would. So, why it's all worth it? Excellent work ethic, amazing people, learning about the different cultures, especially nice if you want to travel. Went up and down Germany visiting past trainees, that was a lot of fun. Your team can become a family, especially since a lot of them don't have family here. What I loved about it at LB Pork, I got to be mom to a bunch of young people. What I struggled with when things weren't going so well, I had to be mom. So it definitely had its good and bad. And this, I like this picture. This is one of our employee pictures at LB. In this picture, I have 4 Ukrainians, 4 Brazilians, 2 Filipinos, 1 Mexican, 1 Frenchman, and 1 Spaniard. So it really was an international family at LB Pork, and we did a lot of gatherings and get-togethers. And if you are utilizing J1s, I feel that that's really important, because that's part of the cultural exchange visa. You're supposed to be giving them those kinds of opportunities. So I always encourage people to take the heart of the visa to heart and actually try and involve them in as much as you can. So that's it.
Oh my gosh, I love I think it might be some of the most important takeaways today. I think some of what you said about those things that an employer will have to think about, the little things about the cultural the cultural differences, housing, transportation, those things that might not come up in your visit with Aaron or with an immigration attorney, but are so important to them actually being able to become part of the communities and of the workplace and of our Southern Minnesota region. So thank you very much, Diane. We're now going to just go into a little break. We'll come back in about 15 minutes. Please help yourself to refreshments back there, cookies, coffee.
Myanmar. A lot of people here, they didn't know about our country, most of the people, but my country is the border of the Thailand, so a lot of people they know about the Thailand. Okay, so now I'm working at the JBS since I came here 2023 March, started from this, I relocated to the United States. I'm working for the JBS. So now almost 1.5 years in the JBS. So why I come to United States? Because of I won the lottery that we call diversity visa, also known as the green card lottery. So I try to come to USA, but our country people, Asian people, is not easily to come to United States, even the visit visa, even with the visit visa. So always I wanted to come, and I have the dream to come to USA. So I'm trying to apply the diversity visa, since I'm qualifying for the high school because if someone want to apply this visa, we need to qualify like graduated people only, at least you need to pass the high school education. So I trying to apply like 3 times, is one time in the 2016 and then 2008 and then 2023. So I won this lottery in the 2023 for the 2023. So at that time, my life is need to start the new life again, because I divorced with my married, and then I have 2 kids, and then it's so much challenging to come to United States. So I don't have anybody know here, and I don't have any relative to come to here, contact to anybody. So at that time, the JBS, they have the seminar, they have the one seminar. So I go and attend the seminar, and they give the opportunity, like when we want to work at the JBS, they can help us for everything. So when we come to here, they pick me up from the airport, and then they give us some accommodation, free accommodation for the 2 weeks or 3 weeks, or some of them they give the 1 month accommodation, and then they give us the free transportation. They give us they help us for my child education. I have the 2 kids, and one is 4th grade and another one is a kindergarten. So they help us for this kid education, and then they help us to get the SSN2. So I decided to work at JBS, and then I get this benefit, all of this benefit. So I work for now at the production line 1.5 year. 1.5 year is some kind of very hard job, but yeah, but it's worth to get this job, because everything they have for me, so I work for them. They also this win-win situation for me, so it's really good to join with the JBS program. And then now I'm trying to get my upgrade. I'm trying to get out from the production line, and I want to upgrade my career. So they have the kind of the Better Future program. They give us to go to the college, but they have some contract. It's like I need to work for them a few years for that. So they give us to go to the school too. So, and then when I want to come here, there is a lot of challenging. At first, it's language. The language is really hard, challenging for me. Until now, I'm still learning the English. So our Myanmar people is used to know the English, but we don't have any practice for the speaking and then the listening knowledge. So I'm come here as I don't understand their accent, and until now I still learning. I'm still learning their accent and everything. And then the culture is so much different everywhere. And then the health and other things, so many things. Everything is transportation. Everywhere is different from our country. And then some of you all will know about our country situation is that everything is downgrade because the military take over our country, and then everything economy and then the education, everything is downgrade. So when I come here, it's better for my kids' education, and then for my work also I joined with the JVS. So at first I so much worrying about with my 2 kids, and what we're going to be if everything I worry about every day, the accommodation, everything I worry for myself and my kids too. So after I done with JVS, and then they help me out a lot. So I'm now 1.5 years. I'm passed smoothly my life. Yes. And then now I'm studying to work at the position at quality control. And then in the future I would like to join with the Better Future program, and I want to upgrade my career. So when I decided to come to here, is the weather. The weather is so much different from my country. Yeah, the weather is, my country is such a very hot tropical zone. So when I come here, I never see the snow in my life for 40 years, and I come here, is my first time see the snow, and then it's so cold, and every time in the summer also I feel, every time I feel cold all the time. So yeah, it's so much, the weather is so much different. And in my country is that we had the 3 seasons, but every season is hot. Cold season also hot, rainy season also hot, and we feel every time it's hot. So it's so much different about the weather too. But I working the production line is the very cold place too. So when we keep working, it's make you getting warm. So yeah, I can work. I can work. It doesn't matter. So some of the JVS that provide me the accommodation and then pick me up from the airport, and then some they give us the 2 weeks accommodation free, and then after that, when we rent the house or apartment, they give us the 1 month deposit. 1 month deposit, and then 1 month deposit, and then they trying to help me out to get the driving license, everything, the transportation, everywhere we want to go, they give us transportation. So for us, our country, our women not used to drive the car, but I'm taking the driving class, and then they just help me to get the transport for the driving license. So I get the driving license after 3 months later when I relocated here. After 3 months later, I get the license. I fail a lot of time, but yeah, finally I get the driving license. So as a single parent of me, I have to try. I have to try myself. So I have no choice. I have to keep going. So yeah. So I did it for 1.5 years now. Yes. So any of you want to know anything about me or
During our
diversity
Q&A portion, none of our either our international students nor AA are on that panel. So now is actually a really great time for if you have any questions from a firsthand, someone who's experienced coming through the U.S. immigration system on a work-based visa. Now would be a great time for that. I can come around with the mic if you like. Sam Ziegler.
Sam Ziegler with GreenSeam. One question I have is I want to challenge us as employers to make sure we do a better job. What's something that's really important to you or others that would come here for their first time that we would do as employers?
it's the attitude. I think attitude is the attitude, and then the language. Yeah, I think this two is the these two is important for, yeah. Some other, okay, we came here, our group of people, all of them, they won the lottery, but some of them, they're taking the benefit, some of them, they're taking the benefit from the company, but they don't work for the longer. But it's not good for the future person, you know, because you take this benefit, you should work for at least, we don't have the contract, but you should work for at least 1 year or something like this, because, yeah, some of them, this kind, you know, I feel bad for the company too. And then some more, when we try to get the visa in my country, when we go to the U.S. embassy, the consular interview me like, why you are going to the JBS? Because you are the green card holder, you can go every state of the city. So it's like, do you know how the JBS the working, or what kind of company is that? Yeah, we know because we so difficult about our language at first. So we know it's the hard job, but we still have to come to, and we start from the zero, from the zero our life. So after 1 or 2 years later, you can get used to it here, language or everything. You trying to get your career. You can go every city, or you can stay here also. Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm sure employers in the room are thinking about how can they get someone on a diversity visa to come work for them. And I'm wondering, can you speak at all to the relationship or the connection that JBS has to the diversity visa, and how you got plugged into JBS so early on?
Oh, okay. JBS, they already call the diversity visa the who winner. They call, not only this year, they called a few years ago, they already called the diversity visa person, because they want their employer, the diversity visa is, they don't need to do for the state pass. We are green card holder, so yeah, they can take that easily. Some of the company they try to do to get the green card visa is longer. So one of my nephew, he want to come out from my country, so some of the agent, they trying to get the green card. It's not the diversity visa. They trying to get the green card from the other company. It's from the California. My nephew, he's trying now, but my nephew, he need to pay for the 25K for the green card visa for his alone. Yeah, so it's so much. But it's not. It's taking 2 years. Taking 2 years to get this visa, and he need to pay for 25K too. So our diversity visa is not only my country, as a few Asian country and some kind of the Africa or some, yeah, we want this visa, and then we can come out from very fast. It can come out from at least 6 months or 1 year. In 1 year we can come out with it. But some of them are fail because we need to do a lot of document to come out with this diversity visa. The U.S. embassy, they checking a lot of document must be the real, and then you must be the qualifying mean it's a high school. You must be finish your high school diploma, and everything must be complete. So is there any suspect or something like that? They just block them and they just reject the visa, and then we need to check our medical check it, and some of them they fail, and they fail for the liver check, and then they taking the 6 months the medicine. Then over this September is the final they calling the people. So after some of them they taking the medicine and they can finish between this year, so they just rejected. So we need to do a lot of the steps to come with this diversity visa too. And then some of them, we have the spouse, under 21 years old, we can come along with who is the winner, the father or mother, the kid is under 21 years old, they can come along. If the 21 over, they're not allowed to come here. And then they have the limit, how many percent they call in. Some of them, they have the spouse, a few spouse, and then the family is a big family. So maybe we have the case number like my number is 8,000 over. And then some of our year who winner is the 2,000 over, they just cut off and they don't have chance to come over here. Yeah, we had the discussion.
Thank you, AA. That's all the questions we have time for, but let's all give her a round of applause. My memory. A community economics extension educator for the University of Minnesota Extension, and he's certainly become a friend. He is an economist by trade and has firsthand experience navigating the U.S. immigration system, both for himself and for his wife. So take it away. Let's see, I'll give you your clicker here too. Welcome, Fernando.
Hello, everyone. Yep, my name is Fernando Quijano. I work with the Department of Community Development at the University of Minnesota Extension and in the Division of Community Economics. So, yeah, I would describe our mission as researchers who engage with community and business leaders to improve the social and economic fabric of our communities. Yeah. So my area of specialization is community-oriented workforce development. And the reason why I chose to engage to make this idea of foreign talent attraction one of my concentrations is because it's obvious that for as much as we try, even the best intentions, we cannot align the supply with the demand for labor, right, in Minnesota, and that's well documented. All right, so I have some slides here to show you. There we go. So we'll talk a little bit about Minnesota's participation in the foreign labor market, competing in a global labor market, understanding trends, the economic impact of economic workers, the challenges and opportunities of talent attraction, and the Welcoming Communities program at the university. Very good. All right, so the idea here obviously is to persuade business firms and communities to take on the challenge of global talent attraction. Yeah. All right, very good. So, obviously, as I said, many industries no longer need to be informed about this because they have to, right? They have to be in the space. And agriculture obviously is no stranger to that endeavor, so very good. So here is Minnesota's participation in the foreign labor market. So this is the latest data I have for just the third quarter of 2024 about who's coming to Minnesota from other countries and what occupations they're in. So obviously software developers are usually number one. So yeah, but yeah, notice in the medical profession, for example, the third down the road there, we hire over 400 people every 3 months. I mean, that's 1,600 people in the medical profession. 1,600, that's a lot. I mean, if any one of these occupations, so yeah, immigration is critical, right? It's critical to our economy, no doubt about it, yeah. So one thing that I love about this field is that immigration is 100% transparent when it comes to gathering data. All the data is there. Everything you want to know about anyone having anything to do with bringing a foreign worker, that's all documented. You can find out what the name of their lawyer is, what their phone is, email address, why, what's the name of the position, everything. Everything is readily available to everyone. Yeah, there's the, one of the addresses is here, but I have more, yeah. This is amazing, this LCA performance data. Have you ever linked to that? Yeah. I wonder what happens if I try, oh no, I don't have a mouse to link to it. But anyway, I can share this PowerPoint with you guys, and you'll have, but it's amazing. You go to that, and there's a huge database of the entire United States you download that will tell you which workers came in the latest quarter, in what occupations, how many of them, once again, every detail about those workers. And it's very informative for you as a business, right? Because you know who are the people coming to Minnesota, how much they're earning, right? Under what conditions they're coming, everything about it. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. There's another one called the Employer Data Hub. That's another amazing link, or you just click on the map of the United States and then click on the map of Minnesota, and you click on H-2B and bam, there it is. Everyone who came on the H-2B visa the last month, the last 3 months, the last year, it's amazing. So again, a great field for you to know, it's not like, I don't know what's going on. Nah, you know everything that's going on in this field. It's pretty cool. I love it, yeah. All right. So let's talk a little bit about global markets in an economic sense, like supply and demand kind of thing, right? So keep in mind that, when you're hiring, when you enter the global market, you're participating in a fully competitive market, right? What that means essentially is that no single employer or worker control the wage, right, that is offered in an occupation. So you need to be informed, information is critical. You need to be informed about what wages you need to offer in order to attract workers, right? And you're not the controller of that. It's that the market is determining that. So that's an important aspect of foreign talent attraction. You have to pay a fair wage, essentially. So, So you need to understand wage trends in your particular industries. So if I was going to ask you, well, these are the wages paid by some of the top 25 LCA applicants. LCA stands for Labor Condition Application. Is the form you fill out when you're an employer who's looking for a foreign worker. But what is the average wage of a foreign worker in Minnesota? Answer it. $100,000 is the average wage. So obviously, it's not just about, low-paid workers. No, it's our doctors, right? It's very, very critical occupations that we need, right, to attract workers, foreign workers from abroad. So, all right. And so, what about your industry? What is the wage required in your industry? Well, when you fill out an LCA form, the Department of Labor is going to verify that you are familiar with what you are going to pay, right, with what the market bears today for a particular occupation. That's kind of a requirement, right? Like what are you intending to pay, right? And I think there are several ways of demonstrating that, right? So anyway, but it's important to be informed. So one source, I said, being someone who is heavily into this workforce development space, I love the current employment statistics. It's a great source of both employment and wages in every industry. So I did a study. I'm an artist, kind of a hippie type guy myself. So I did a study of employment and wages using this data. So here in this horizontal axis, I have the number of workers. In the vertical axis, I have the wage that they are paid. And I studied every industry for every month for the past 20 years. in Minnesota to discover the trend. So here they are. So transportation and warehousing, someone was talking about how much more they have to pay. Truck drivers, well, there you go. Yeah, it was that, right? Yeah, well, so there's transportation and there's construction. Yeah, oops, I don't know why this jumped twice, but anyway, the green is agriculture. So those are the wages paid in Minnesota in agriculture from 2007 to 2023. So notice how curious it is that those values, those green dots are not like scattered all over the place. They kind of, right? The number of people agriculture hires in Minnesota is pretty much standard around 150,000 workers, right? That's not just today or for the past 20 years or whatever. So that's an interesting fact, right? Does not vary very much, you know. Wages do go up, yeah, now, but employment is pretty steady. There's like a natural rate of employment in particular industries, yeah. That's nursing, the pink, nursing. Wholesale trade, financial activities, banking, insurance, that kind of thing. There it is. And yeah, durable goods manufacturing. Now, the green, again, is that's mostly agriculture, is non-durable goods manufacturing. You may want to think about, you know, is durable goods manufacturing a competing industry with non-durable goods, right? So it's like you kind of have to watch each other, you know, in terms of wage levels and so on. So anyway, so there's leisure and hospitality, and finally retail trade, yeah. So retail trade, you know, they pay the lowest wages and hire the highest number of people in Minnesota. But it's an interesting analysis, don't you think, of wage levels and employment in different industries. For the United States, or not the United States, sorry, Minnesota, specifically for Minnesota. Yeah. If you're from another state, I can do it for your state. Anyway, all right. Now, so let's take a look at. I wanted to bring this graph up because it does have agriculture right there. The green is actually specifically food manufacturing. So you can see the trend. Once again, this is what you need to understand about levels of employment and wages in your industry. So food manufacturing, the green jagged line, the jagged means simply seasonality, right? Seasonality. But notice that doesn't change very much, right? The level of employment is around 45,000 or whatever throughout time, yeah. Here's the smaller manufacturers. Yeah, employ less workers. I added that as well because animal slaughtering is actually part of your same sector in the current employment statistics. So anyway, but yeah, it's great. This trend is even longer. Notice that 1990 to 2023. That's huge, right? And it kind of tells you the story of the Minnesota economy. You notice how you can break these down between, right, 1990 and 2010 or so, whatever, 2007 recession, you know, the Great Recession, essentially, this thing, right? And after. So notice there's more volatility in employment, right, before then, or it's like more stable employment, but at a slightly lower level. It's really cool. You can do a lot with the current employment statistics. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to take a look at that. All right. Again, this is the idea that I mentioned before about current sector strategy. Again, if you compare durable goods versus non-durable goods, again, there's probably a room for improvement in wages, so that you have to be mindful, but make sure the durable goods industry is not going to steal your workers. Okay. So notice how it used to be that the wages in the green there, right, around 2015, wages paid in the non-durable goods food processing, right, your industries were higher than the durable goods industry. But the trend now is the durable goods industry is paying slightly higher wages. So be careful. At a $2 or $3 range, right, could throw all workers over to the other side. So, yeah. All right, very good. Well, let's talk a little bit. I think this has been demonstrated by many presenters today. You know, what is the economic impact of immigrant workers? How about we talk about this guy? Anybody recognizes this? Yeah. Keep your mic. Yeah, that's Neil Kashari. Yeah. Right? He's, well, who is he? He's the highest person in our monetary system in Minnesota, right? No one is better than this guy in economics, okay? And then money management than this guy, obviously. He's the president of the Minneapolis Federal Reserve District, right? So what does he say about immigration? It's really cool, because there's no free lunch. Like, immigrants are like a free lunch for America. It's like, hey, take advantage of it. You know, absolutely, yeah. You know, you could spur economic development with tax cuts, or you could do it through higher productivity, or you could do it through a higher replacement rate, right? Where the population is, you know, local population is growing. But he says, no, none of those things are working. Productivity has been increasing around 1% per year for the last forever. So can't do that. Replacement rate, fertility rates are not gonna help you over there. So what's there to do? Answer. Bring people from elsewhere. Yeah, bring them in, let them in. Yeah, I know some people hate that idea, but whatever, but I'm telling you, not me, him, right? So hey, think about it. You need to think about entering global markets, global labor markets. Absolutely. Yeah, so again, yeah, long-term economic growth comes from two sources: productivity growth, population growth. Productivity has been slow. The surest way to increase the working age population is through immigration. Yeah, I love that. Yeah. So before you discard his comments, consider the economic contributions, right, of immigrants. The we already talked about this today, right? The impact is the spending power of immigrants, $12.4 billion annually, with $4.5 billion paid in state and local taxes, $2.5 billion paid in federal taxes. Industry presence, you know, obviously many Minnesota industries hire foreign workers. Absolutely, they couldn't do it without them. Productivity, right? Yeah, the productivity issue is interesting, because what happens is if you hire a Mexican worker to hold the ladder, the American construction worker can go and work faster, right? So the productivity of the American domestic worker increases when you hire complementary labor, right? Labor that is a complement to what you're doing. So the best kind of immigration is complementary immigration, where the American workers will be better off as a result of having foreign workers that will help you with your job, right? Complement what you do. Yeah. So entrepreneurship, many immigrants become successful entrepreneurs. Labor participation, right? So immigrants have a higher labor force participation rate than domestic workers. And of course, global presence, right? When you hire a foreign worker, maybe you learn a little bit about their countries, and maybe you do business in that country, right? So, very good. Opportunity. Over time, immigrants become upwardly mobile, homeowners, they accumulate wealth, right? Yeah. Higher education, obviously, we talked about that a lot today, right? About the relationship between foreign workers and higher education. High skilled talent, right? A high share of foreign-born workers are placed in highly specialized fields, right? Yeah. What is the main determinant of economic growth for whether it's the nation or your town? Education, yes, absolutely. That's very important. What do you do with education?
Enhance your skills.
Yeah, the idea is the main source of economic growth is ideas. Ideas that turn into inventions and innovations. So inventions and innovations, the main source of economic growth for any community, any society. So what happens when you bring these beautiful ladies to do microbiology, right? Yeah, they teach you new stuff from where they come from, right? Everyone comes with a different set of skills and culture that complements your culture, right? That helps you a lot in terms of economic growth, yeah. So of course, again, immigrants fill up many critical jobs that we cannot fill up with our domestic supply. And it makes business sense. Minnesota businesses submitted nearly 11,000 LCAs, labor condition applications, in 2018, which ranks 15 among. I could have updated that statistic, sorry, but it's a lot. Yeah, I think I still have it somewhere else. It was 8,249 in the fourth quarter of 2024, third quarter of 2024. Anyway, we'll get to that. Yeah. So obviously, as we have seen, the economic and social contributions of labor-based migration are well documented. However, not all businesses and communities are equally ready, right? Or willing or able to attract foreign workers. So that's where the challenge lies. That's why I call this the challenge of foreign talent attraction. We know that it's good. We documented here. This is a great idea. But are you ready? Is your community ready? So how ready and willing is your business or community to welcome new residents? So it comes to that, right? So yeah, could they benefit from global workforce initiatives? So I run into this GreenSeam State of Agriculture survey, and they have the same identical question, right? It's like, wow, man, I was looking for this. Do you think international workers would help alleviate the talent shortage at your organization? Absolutely, man, 34%, right? Another 34% say possibly yes, right? So that's like 2/3 of all businesses surveyed here say, yeah, we would benefit from that, right? The others, 90% no, and 13% we don't have a shortage, right? But, so most businesses in Minnesota would benefit, say that they would benefit, right? So, all right. So here is so we know that they are going to benefit, but what are the challenges and the opportunities? So let's take a look at some of these. I did this myself with kind of like thinking, what myself in terms of business culture and community readiness, right? In terms, and what are the challenges? So these are buttons that maybe you're ready to push, your community is ready to push, right? So which buttons is your community ready to push is essentially the question, right? Yeah. So we talked about a bunch of these today, right? First of all, something that I think is very crucial is the HR departments, human resource departments need to decide what their structure will be with regard to foreign hiring, right? So you can restructure your department so you have internally, you have someone there permanently all the time, or you can hire an immigration lawyer, which is a little more expensive, it depends on how much action you have, right? So all the way from nothing to, highly sophisticated infrastructure to do global workforce development. And it is fundamental that business firms understand that global workforce hiring is not something that's going to happen between today and tomorrow. No, it's going to take a little while, right? It's going to take patience. It's going to take advice, right? And it's a system that you need to build from the ground up, you know. So where you change the values of your company to say, yeah, we're going to get into this, one step at a time. It's complex. But we're going to do it. We're going to do it. Let's just start, right? And think about it as a long-term strategy. So you're going to have to change add a global dimension to your strategic planning. It's fundamental. Yeah. Improve the culture and HR systems to handle foreign hiring. Manage the dominant culture, like not here, right? Not in my backyard, yeah, kind of thing, right? Support equity, inclusion, and belonging, right? Those are business culture challenges. Under community readiness, right? You're gonna have to promote welcoming communities. Fundamental, right? Fundamental. Yeah. Share power and decision making with the newcomers. Are you willing to do that, right? So that's another challenge, definitely. Encourage civic and government commitment, yeah. And obviously secure the provision of goods and services and infrastructure, like housing, the things we were talking about today, right? Very good. But look at the opportunities under economic benefits, right? You can diversify your labor supply and maintain a sustainable workforce, foster innovation, entrepreneurship, and economic growth, gain global exposure, and solve labor shortages and fill critical jobs. And of course, there's social benefits, you stimulate economic activity, diversify consumer choices, counter demographic trends, right? And capture the benefits of diversity and cultural vitality, right? That come with foreign residents. Yeah. So, yeah, some of those more difficult than others. What do you think? Let's make this a little interactive. What do you think about? What do you see as the biggest challenge in your community? Anybody? What's that?
The government.
The government?
Having the right visas.
Yeah. Yeah, let me say this. I navigated the immigration system. I confronted the entire immigration system by myself. Because I refused to pay the $15,000 lawyer fee. I wasn't gonna. And I noticed that in the immigration forms that you have to fill out, anywhere in there says that you need a lawyer. There's no lawyer is required. You can do it yourself, or they have a separate portion that says, did you do this yourself, or did someone else did it for you? You need to sign, right? That says which way you did it, yeah. And I have the view that the immigration system in the United States is one of the best systems. I know it's difficult, and I know some rules are unfair, and like you were saying, we should change some things like, allow the wives to work, and I totally agree with that. But if you're in trouble and you call the immigration system, they will help you. They will help you. I don't know if it was
No, I sat on hold. They don't answer the phone anymore. It's a never-doing
Really?
robot.
Oh, yeah. We have different experiences, I suppose. I don't know. It was my veteran status. I don't know. Something helped. Yeah. But anyway, it took 2 years. Well, 19 months for my wife to finally arrive in the United States with a green card. So we wouldn't strive for the green card, no work visa or anything like that. But anyway, it's not impossible. I think, and as I said, if you set up the right structure and maybe, in your organization and be patient about it, I think you can do it. You can at least begin to participate in global labor markets, which will be critical to your organization sooner or later. Yeah. Very good. So we recommend that the University of Minnesota, this program, with Welcoming Communities program, which is about inclusion And it takes what I call a structural functionalist approach to evaluating your community in terms of sectors and how ready each sector is to bring in, right, to welcome immigrants. Yeah. So the sectors, we did this recently in Fergus Falls for community, and the sectors included in that evaluation of the community were school, law, health, religion, government, business, and non-profit organizations. And the dimensions of inclusion were awareness, you know, how aware are you of the need for inclusiveness, leadership energy, like, yeah, let's do this, right, kind of thing, engagement, the willingness to share power, resources, and policies and practices. So you can, there's a link, again, like I said, we'll share this PowerPoint with you guys, and you can, if you go to the link, you'll go straight to the web page for the University of Minnesota, where you can see what the results of that in that particular community were, which are really interesting. Yeah, you know, so some sectors claim to be, right, very willing to welcome immigrants, but in some respects they kind of fall short, right? Yeah, so it's really interesting anyway. So that's it. Let me just summarize. So obviously, here is the conclusions. Labor-based immigration is a key component of the Minnesota economy, without a doubt. Competing in a global labor market requires firms, business firms, you know, to remain well informed about domestic labor market conditions. So that's important. Experts agree that immigrants generate more benefits than costs to Minnesota. Employers looking to attract foreign talent need to review their culture, structure, and strategy. And finally, preparing your business and community to welcome new residents poses many challenges, but also brings many opportunities. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I love that there's, although that you have that angle of you've walked it, you've been through it, and I love your very positive, optimistic view of the immigration system from someone who's navigated it. I think that's kind of unique, and we, I mean, coming from someone who has never navigated it, all I hear often are the negatives, and I think we're all very keenly aware of those, but to hear sometimes about what's working, maybe we don't hear that as much. So thank you.
Here's an interesting fact. My application was delayed by 3 months because I submitted one form upside down. And you control your own submissions. They cannot control it for you. You have to control them yourself. And they said, well, we cannot read your document. When I called finally, I said, why is it taking so long? I said, we cannot read one of your documents. It's like, oh yeah, what happened? Yeah, this one paper, 1 page upside down. And that was holding your application. Thank you very much. But I also said, this was before the pandemic, I said, if my wife doesn't come, she's not gonna come for another 2 years because COVID-19 is coming. And they said, yes, we totally understand. Here is how you do it in secret. And they gave me the secret address to call and say, expedite, NBC expedite. And you write there and you say, here's my situation, I'm a bring my wife, and they did.
Will the secret address be released with the PowerPoint?
Yes.
We'll try to find the secret address.
NBC, yeah.
Thank you, Fernando. And actually,
NBC expedite.
we're gonna invite you, if you want to stay up here, we're gonna jump into our panel and Q&A, and I'll welcome Aaron, and I'll welcome Diane, and I'll welcome Mei Lee as well. These are our experts, and I have a few prepared questions, and I hope you have been thinking of questions throughout the day that they can speak to from their different angles of understanding on this topic. So take a seat, so no particular order is needed, getting these chairs laid out.
The experts.
Thanks, Sam. We'll start with Diane, and then we'll work our way down with these questions. Who else?
I sat on the wrong end.
Did you? If you want, I can move over there, and then Aaron can go first. I'm gonna pull up my questions. This is the downfall of not using paper. All right, if we're getting feedback, Sam, there's a panel back there. Do you want to maybe press you'll see 2 different sliders on the interface if you want to turn them down a click. All right, so first of all, now that we already have done our introductions, we can skip past that. But first of all, anyone who has the answer, I'd say you don't necessarily, if you say this isn't quite as much in my wheelhouse, because this is a very diverse group, then no need to, you can pass. So what industries, and maybe you hit on this, Fernando, are seeing this greatest challenge that you see immigration could be a solution to, the global workforce could be a solution to? I'd say, in addendum, what industries that aren't taking advantage do you think are missing out?
I work pretty solely in agriculture and a little bit of manufacturing, so I don't know if I'm the right person for that.
Well, I know the statistics pretty well, so I know that, yeah, what industry is taking the most advantage? Software development, period. That they bring 450 software developers per quarter, so that's like 4 times, or like 1,800 workers, yeah. And health could be the area where less barriers could help us get more doctors, in terms of what I see, in terms of the numbers that are coming.
It's a big opportunity area.
So I'll speak to my experience working with clients in greater Minnesota, most specifically southwestern Minnesota. And as a caveat, my mom's a teacher and my dad's a farmer. And I see a lot of farmers and a lot of school administrators coming to me complaining about their labor shortages. And I have an easier solution for the educators than I do the farmers. With farmers, one of the biggest challenges with the immigration system is that there's not a temporary year-round visa for manual labor. And without that existing, it's really hard to come up with a viable solution to farmers who just say, I really need help on the farm. I don't need someone with a college degree, but I need them year-round. And I don't have a good solution for them that's going to give them what they need in fewer than 4 years. So that's a struggle, and that's where I think we need advocates. Diane has talked about her advocacy work, and we need more strong voices rising up out of rural America talking about this need for year-round workers in the agricultural sector. Now, when it comes to education, this cap-exempt H-1B is the bomb. Schools really should be taking advantage of being able to hire teachers on cap-exempt H-1Bs. The processing time is quickly, they're not that expensive, honestly, and we talk the talk, let's walk the walk about having our teachers look like our kids. We want a diverse workforce in our schools. We want to be creating strong role models and examples for our increasingly diverse student bodies. And cap-exempt H-1B can really be a solution for our local schools in greater Minnesota to try and diversify our teachers and school staff.
Thank you. What is one thing that you would like a business professional, maybe an HR professional, we have some of those with us today, or a community leader with an audience of HR professionals? What's one thing you would like them to know about either your organization or your services, or from your set of expertise, what's one misconception that you would like to dismantle for them? Yeah, go ahead, you can start.
Teamwork makes the dream work. And it really does take a collection of people with different areas of expertise to make these processes go smoothly. I don't know all of the answers, but I can provide big picture visions about, this is what the immigration system looks like today, and these are the different routes. And then there are individuals up here who are the implementers of that oftentimes. And so it takes thinkers, it takes doers, and it takes people with all different areas of expertise. And don't be afraid if you don't know all of the answers, because we don't either. But it just takes knowing who to speak to and knowing when to ask the questions.
I would like to say to the people in the room and to our community to don't be afraid of meeting and talking to international students. And yes, you can hire international students. There are ways that you can do that. So if you have any questions, feel free to connect with me. I know lots of other international offices within our region, within the state of Minnesota. They're more than willing to help you if you're interested in hiring an international student.
I have three things. Long-term view, right? Long-term view. Yeah, immigration does not happen today. Long-term view, culture, right? Culture, you need the culture to support you in this effort to enter global labor markets. And did I say patience? Long-term view, patience, and culture. Those are the three things.
So my goal when I started my consulting business, like I said, I was HR at Albee Pork for 10 years, brought a lot of foreign workers in, love working with the different cultures, love bringing those people here and getting them in our communities. And my goal with starting my own business was to help people learn about that process, what visas are available, how to implement it in your business. What are the things that you need to do to be successful, both from getting the visa side and once you have the workers here, making them comfortable and doing things that can help them be a success and therefore help you be a success. So it's more of I want to work with people who just need to understand the system, maybe need some help getting started. I can do some visas if it's something I can't do. Like I do, I bring TNs, but I have people I call and say, hey, if you want to do this visa, call here. If you want to do a green card, call here. Just help people along the path is kind of my mission.
Yeah, that's pretty much onto it. I think my battery's dying. Oh, there you go. You sensed it. You were like, she needs this. All right. Well, how about your questions? What are your burning questions for anyone up here? And it can be for just one, or it can be for all four. Sam's coming around with a potentially functioning mic. We got one up here in the corner.
Repeat the question, Holly, because it's not,
Oh, okay. The question is, what are your questions?
her question.
Oh,
Repeat
here we
her
go.
question.
Oh, you want me to I understand now.
So we talked a little bit about some of the immigrant or new country people who come in and you don't know how our banking system works, our healthcare system works, our school systems work. How do we educate or get those other organizations on board so they know how they can progress experiences?
How do we get how do we get entire communities up to speed on what it'll take to be able to holistically be able to welcome this human being with a full whole life into their community? Is that sort of what you're saying from the healthcare perspective, from education and all that? Who would like to tackle that one?
Celia knows what my opinions are because we're working on this together in our area, so maybe pass that on.
And maybe for
Well,
the rest of the group's benefit too, if you would like to reiterate some of that. But yeah,
Go ahead.
So we've started a diversity group in our area just to help find ways to involve the different populations in the community. One of the things we brought in a gal that I know from St. James area, which is very highly diverse, and they've been very successful. So just talking about, okay, what worked well in your area. One of the things that she said that really resonated with me is don't do it for them. Bring them on board and do it with them. So to, bring, if it's a Hispanic population or whatever population it is you're trying to get involved, make sure you have them involved in the process, because they're the ones that know what they need. So we're working on a long overdue project to have like a guide, a county guide for new people to the area. Different events we can have to help people not be so intimidated by the different populations, but always looking for input.
Yeah, I would say do not treat new foreign workers like workers. Treat them like residents, right? Everyone has the right to access and inclusion, I think, and that's important to look at people, on the same level playing field.
So at SMSU, we're kind of like a little microcosm of the overall city that we're based in. So what we've learned is that with our international students who have just arrived, you have to make sure that they have an orientation, that they have time, and it's going to take some time, and at times many years, for them to start to learn about the language, the culture, and the setting. It's not going to be one size fit all, and it's not going to be instantly okay. The next month, they're all adjusted. They know everything. They know the language. They're going to be fine. It takes years, and so you're going to have that type of support in place. One of the things that work well for us at the university level with our students is that we have leadership mentoring programs where older students, students who are in their senior year, have gone through it all, would mentor the newer ones. And so I can see that as a part of being able to welcome new immigrants into our larger community.
Mentorship programs, wow. I think you can conceptualize hiring international workers either from like a top-down approach or a bottom-up approach. And I think it's a lot more palatable to start with one. Start with one hire. Start with one international student who you want to hire for a summer internship, and work up from there. If you take it from the bottom up, you don't have to have a humongous apparatus in place for a really, large group of employees that are going to solve all of your hiring needs. But starting with one, and it might be, taking a very, specialized approach in making sure that one person has access to the resources that they need to succeed in their new community. But as it grows, you'll develop an understanding of where there are gaps in systems and resources in the community. I still remember the very first client who I ever gave an employment authorization card to. It was a really big deal and milestone for my young social enterprise law firm to say, like, hey, I helped someone get authorization to work in this country. And Kivu immigration law now assists over 300 people per year in getting employment authorization. And that didn't happen overnight, but we were able to build up the systems over time. As someone who isn't always the most patient and likes to see results right away, it's tough, but I do think that bottom-up approach is the way to go for employers who are brand new to supporting an international workforce.
There are some themes in there. I don't know if you noticed. One of them is this spirit of collaboration, and that it's a huge undertaking, and especially when there are all these different elements of someone's life. So to be able to just focus on how do we begin, either as a business or as a community, what's the one thing we're gonna target? But there's also there's those connections within the community, but then there's those other, like you mentioned St. James, or Aaron, you're in Worthington. There are other communities that are farther down this path than you, I guess, speaking to maybe more the economic developer in the room, that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can maybe see what's working over there and what do we have the means to replicate here now, maybe just starting with that one thing. Any other questions?
A question? I'll let you repeat it. Not to be political, so I don't want to go on a political path, but how do we possibly hire people that are coming over through the immigration system at our southern border? Is that an option? There's a lot of people per year, per day that come through that pathway. Are they hireable, and what would an employer do?
So for those who, if you couldn't hear, for those coming across the border at our south, are they hireable, and how is that that human capital, or how are those skills employed? Are they employable?
So if an individual comes to the United States without advance permission or documentation or a stamp in their passport, it's not going to be possible for an employer to hire them the next day. The individuals who cross the southern border have the opportunity to seek employment authorization through humanitarian paths, and those humanitarian paths often lead to employment authorization. So I'll give asylum for an example. I mentioned this previously, but we've learned a lot today. Asylum seekers must submit an application for asylum to the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services and explain in that application persecution that they experienced in the past, or why it's not safe for them to return to their country. That begins the process for them being able to seek asylum in the United States. 5 months later, after they've filed that application for asylum, they can file an application for employment authorization. That employment authorization card is going to be that red card that you saw on the screen, and they'll also get a social security number, and they can use that to work anywhere in the United States while they wait for their asylum case to process through the asylum system within the immigration agencies. So if an asylum seeker comes to an employer with employment authorization and a social security card, hire them. You can do it. You know, there's no reason why you shouldn't consider someone with a valid employment authorization card and social security card. Those are the documents that people seeking humanitarian protection in the United States will present in order to lawfully work in the U.S. Minnesota has also received a lot of Ukrainian parolees, and these are often highly educated individuals who speak English and have had major careers in their home country in Ukraine, many in the agricultural and energy sectors, and are extremely hireable, and they have employment authorization. So Ukrainians didn't necessarily cross the southern border, but also came to the United States fleeing danger. And as long as they have an employment authorization card and a social security card, they are hireable.
And doesn't that kind of take the pressure off too, where it's like there's this one document, if you as the employer can view that document, you're good. You can be the expert for them, and they don't have to be the expert. What a great relief as not an HR person, but an HR appreciator. Anyone want to make any additions to that? Any other questions? Garrett.
This is a question perhaps more geared towards Fernando and your research, but it's my understanding and perception that the rural communities that are growing, especially across southern Minnesota, are those that have embraced diversity. And they've learned throughout the last 3 decades or more. Do you have any insight into the Welcoming Communities Project and how much of an impact this diverse population is having on these communities versus those that aren't as welcoming or aren't as supportive?
I should look at that. You know, I have not directly studied the difference between one community and another, but from the fundamental concepts, right, of how you achieve growth, it makes sense that diversity brings, as I said before, innovation, right? And it's just an engine of growth, definitely. So, yeah, I could not answer specifically, you know, with specific examples, but yes, overall, it just makes sense, right? Yes. Anybody else has a better answer?
Would you say the question was what what's the value? What's the return on the investment for being a welcoming community? I wonder maybe about some of the communities where your students are being employed. Is there if they have transportation and can leave just the direct Marshall area, and I'd advise, I mean, you don't have to name names of communities here, but have you noticed that there's a difference with when you're placing your students, if that community has maybe put in some groundwork of being a good place for someone who's not born in this country to build a life?
I was going to say economic diversification is a fundamental good reason.
I would agree.
Well, I would say that for the international student population, they are a younger audience, right? They are a younger group. They're in their 18 to their early 20s, and for the most part, when they've come to this country, a lot of them they don't have driver's license, and so they need that transportation. So the great thing about being in Marshall is that we do have the community transit program. So then they're able to hop on the bus and go anywhere in Marshall. The challenge then is that if there are businesses, companies that are located outside of Marshall or outside of the transportation service, then some of our students may find it challenging to get there.
I think we just found one of the first things that maybe employers or communities could be focusing on if they really want to bring in this diversification powerhouse of international talent.
Yes, and just from, we're a microcosm, right, of the larger community. Some of the challenges that we have encountered with our students is that in a smaller community, there's not a lot of access to some of the ingredients, the food, the supplies, whatever it would be that the students need. And so in order to do that, they'd have to go to the larger city, or they'd have to order it. And it's important to be able to have that accessibility. And so in rural areas, you have to take a look at, again, that transportation. How easy is it for students to hop on a bus and go to the larger cities so that they can go and get the ingredients or get the things and the items that they need? Or is it just as easy for them to order it online and have it delivered to them? So those are all the things that you have to think about.
The gauntlet's been thrown for the logistics. Super practical, getting from A to B, getting to a place where your place of employment, and then also getting your supplies, getting maybe the culturally familiar items or whatnot.
So the closest international airport is MSP. So for some of the employers here in different areas of Southwest Minnesota, or even in South Dakota, our international students or international workers are coming through an international airport, MSP. How are they going to get from there to SMSU, to some of your communities, to South Dakota, if that's where it is? How will they get there? And unfortunately, the transportation from the larger city to the rural community is not as frequent or easy.
Any other comments along those lines from our other panelists?
I'd like to just kind of throw out the gauntlet a little bit in that please be talking to your legislators about the importance of these workers, of having access to immigration, access to this labor force, because I know for sure we need it in agriculture, and I'm sure there's a lot of your industries that you need this too. So be talking to your legislators, make sure that they have it top of mind and don't just think hearing it from a couple of people. And then also, there's a lot of misinformation out there on social media, and I mean, we all see it, about immigrants, and just try and combat some of that with facts about how good these people and how valuable these people are. As I had one the other day, they're like, well, now they can all get a driver's license and then they can vote. Well, you know what, that's not true. So we need to combat some of this misinformation that make people look down on some of these populations that we really need here. So I would throw that out as a challenge, to just try and be conscious of that and not be afraid to, you don't have to engage in a political manner. You can engage in a, hey, this is the real answer, this is the real fact.
That makes me think back to one of your original comments, Erin, of I think this is a misinformation issue that there isn't more international hiring. And maybe I wonder, it's the founding philosophy for doing this event and opening up these conversations is, let's talk about real stories, let's talk about what's happened, let's talk about, let's hear it from the horse's mouth, for lack of better phrasing. Did you have something to add, Fernando?
I was just, while you were speaking, I was thinking of a recent University of North Dakota study that shows that more than half of the critical doctors in the Red River Valley, in our state and North Dakota, are foreign doctors, foreign educated, foreign doctors educated at the University of North Dakota in Grand Forks. I'm an alumni.
Also Professor Emeritus, I believe.
I think when it comes to welcoming communities, we need to see how we can make our communities attractive to international students and graduates, and also understand why immigrants who are new to the United States are choosing to live in our communities. So Worthington, for example, is home to a large Guatemalan immigrant population who are farmers in Guatemala. And climate change and other elements that are outside of their control, conflict and changing weather and poverty, are pushing them out of their homelands. But these are individuals who are have been tied to their family lands for generations, just like how my family has been tied to our land in southwestern Minnesota for generations. Immigrants choose to settle in places where they feel safe and comfortable, and people who live on farms in their home country are going to feel comfortable settling in rural areas. The fact that greater Minnesota is rural is actually an asset to many of those who are newly arriving to Minnesota. And there's also skills that these individuals bring with them that are different skills than the international students who are applying to colleges and universities in Minnesota. But I think when it comes to ensuring that we have a welcoming community, we need to keep in mind how we can attract immigrants, and also understanding the blessings of diversity and the strengths that we have just for being the communities that we are.
Maylee, I think I remember reading on the SMSU website a piece about when you had recently joined, and you had mentioned that many of the international students choose SMSU because, for the reason that Erin just said, of they do their research and it's a very safe place to live and be a student. Could you say anything else about what are the other assets that Erin was just hinting at that makes or could easily be showcased?
Yeah, so our students and their parents, when they look at SMSU, they see that we are the safest campus in Minnesota. So we're ranked as one of the top for safety.
The safest in all of Minnesota.
The safest in
the
Minnesota.
land of 10,000 schools, essentially. We have a lot of higher ed institutions, and the safest one.
Yes, we are the safest one. We are in rural setting. Our students feel comfortable walking around Marshall. They walk to downtown. We're very walkable during the nice weather time. I tell them not to walk around in the winter time. But in that sense, then I think their family, their parents feel very comfortable sending them here. The other part of why they choose SMSU is that as a regional public university, our pricing is very affordable. So for our price that they pay at SMSU, we're ranked nationally annually every year within the top 20 as most affordable for international students. And so they like that we are affordable as well, and they like our safety feature. And we are a smaller school, so everything that they need is in Marshall. They are able to go with the community transit, with the bus. They're able to go and get everything that they need there. We're not so far from the international airports or some of the largest cities if they need to go and travel there over the weekend to get things that they do need. And so parents like our school, and I think that their children find out that when they're here, we have a small community. So as a smaller school, we know our students by name. So they're just not a number. We know who they are, and we want to make sure that they are successful academically. And so there are lots of support services in place to make sure that they are doing well academically.
Fernando or Diane, would you add any other, what are these unsung heroes of assets that we possess to attract foreign talent?
I was just gonna say, you know, Minnesotans need to believe in themselves because this is a great place. It's a great place, and the global talent attraction is a fierce competition for the best and the brightest. Can we attract the best and the brightest? Absolutely. Minnesota is a great place. It's a great place. Having been, you know, born and raised in Bogota, Colombia myself, you know, I can tell you, you know, this is a great place. So believe in Minnesota, and good things will happen, and we will attract these people here.
Diane, would you make any additions to that?
I guess I would just maybe mention again the J1 program. A lot of people are intimidated by that because of just the 1 year. But if you really want to just dabble in having an international worker, I'd say now I learned a lot about the F1 today, so that's a good thing too. Unfortunately, the area where I'm most focused, we don't have a college very close, and I'm gonna definitely look into that. But then also that J1, just for getting kind of your feet in the water, and it's only 1 year commitment. You can open yourself up to a lot of different cultures. Like I said, how LB Port got involved with the J1 program is one of the owners, when he was a college student at the university, he went and worked in Denmark on a pig farm on the J1 program for 6 months. Came back and they started getting Danes, and now, like I say, they've had 170, I think, different foreign workers, 26 countries, 6 continents, and it's just a really good way to just kind of dabble a little.
And dip the toe in, yeah. J1. The Region 9 Development Commission just did a study across regional institutions, and there were like 300, 400 students that were surveyed, and 80% of them expressed a desire to stay in Minnesota, in rural Minnesota, and at their institution after graduation. So there's something sticky about this area that we can be showcasing, and that we can really proudly stand behind when we're attracting this foreign talent. But I'm not here to stand, I should say, we're the last thing standing between you and some happy hour and maybe enjoying some Southern Minnesota-made adult beverages. But anybody have any other burning questions? This is your time to make it applicable.
So I don't have a question, but I just want to put a plug in for the 2-year colleges too, because there's also opportunities with international students that's growing at those colleges. And so you have the whole gamut from 1-year diploma or 2-year AS degree all the way up to the graduate level. And so I just wanted to make sure to mention that too. At SEC, we've seen our population grow from 16 students to this year we have almost 90. So in a period of like 4 to 5 years, it's just continuing to grow. So I just want to make sure I got that plug in also, because I think there's opportunities at all levels, right? So
Yeah,
they
the
can
2-year
continue
schools.
on to their bachelor's degree. So that's my note, sorry.
No, vital. The 2-year school is so vital, especially as you get farther into those rural communities. And for those who, if you couldn't hear, 2-year schools, technical colleges, are also hubs and gateways for international students. And she was just sharing that SCCs had increased from, you said 16 or 19 to now 90 in just the span of four years. So also huge asset for our region. Anything else?
And let me just say that, yeah, I mean, trade schools will become the thing, because of the new, we're moving from the concept of a 4-year education to the concept of stackable credentials, right? And trade schools are going to play a big role in
Absolutely, yes, yes. Well, thank you so much to our panelists. Let's give them a round of applause. Sam Ziegler, GreenSeam's president and director, is going to come and share about our global workforce program and close us out for the day.
Awesome, this was fantastic. All the speakers today, I wanted to ask the students so many questions and our workers that came here and have that experience of how we can improve as a business and the community standpoint to make sure that we're doing our role and part. But there's a lot of stuff to cover in each one of these. We are looking at having one focused on higher education and students in Mankato in the spring. Solely more focused on that, so there'll be more to come on that part. But please do, we're filming this as you've seen today, and so this will be available. So if you have colleagues or friends or others that weren't able to be here today, that you want to share it with them, that will be available for that as well. There's just a few things I want to recap and point out. You know, it's amazing, why are so many people wanting to come to the U.S.? I was just in Brazil in March, down there on an ag tour for myself or my farm, and Brazil's in a worker shortage. But their worker shortage is they don't want to pay $4 an hour, they want to keep it at $3 an hour. And so they're looking at countries that are right surrounding them, but they didn't even talk about the countries to the north. And there's a little bit to be said. Those countries to the north are saying, how do we get to the U.S.? And so there's some interesting dynamics about workforce supply and demand and where people are trying to go and why they're trying to go there. I think it's pretty impressive that when you looked at just southern Minnesota in this one document that was handed out, there's 2,800 students a year. And if you do some just general math, right, of how many are employed, how many are not employed, or how many opportunities there are. And so you look at this group of folks that would like to get real work experiences that maybe haven't. And it's a two-way street. The students and the colleges need to be able to explain it to the businesses, and the businesses need to be able to get what they need out of it too. So there's a two-way door and communication there. And then often we hear as GreenSeam, it's like, yeah, I know a farmer that needs some workers. And I try to turn that back around, that it's not just farms that talk about worker shortage in rural Minnesota. It is the professional service, it's manufacturing, it is banks, it is all these different sectors. But often when you see or think about international workers, you think of, oh, it's on the farm, or it's in hospitality, or it's in CNA, or those things. And we need to get beyond that because there's more skills available than just those. Some of the comments that I heard today and I heard at other, we did these a couple years ago, was the whole banker thing. When they get their first paycheck, it's hard to cash if they don't have all their documents in place and the business doesn't have a relationship with the local bank near them where they can walk or get to cash the check. So there's definitely a lot more that wasn't able to be covered today, so we could have spent the whole day on this, but we do work with, or do have conversations with some of the experts that were on the panel today to figure those out if you were gonna go ahead with it. So be aware of that. That whole community support and feeling welcomed, that's a challenge. And it needs to be addressed as you are looking at adding this to your business, and not doing it after you've added people and then go, why are they not happy working with you? Well, it might not be anything to do with your business or their job they're doing. It could be just the fact that, hey, I walk down the street and I'm not getting a warm feeling that I should be here. How do you make sure that's changed and you work with your community on that ahead of time? There was just some, items that I thought were really interesting that does spur to some of our other work GreenSeam does in growing businesses, starting new businesses, innovation, entrepreneurship, that there is this increased entrepreneurship by having in immigration, foreign workers, because they do come with a different thought and they think of different problems that they could be solving, and they create businesses around that. And that leads me to one of the things, and please Aaron correct me, or Diane correct me if I'm wrong, but if I understand it right, somebody that comes on a TN visa, their spouse cannot work, correct? Okay, but their spouse can start their own business.
So if they come here, yes, you can't hire them, but they could turn around and start a consulting business of whatever job that they have the skills to do, and start their own business. So there are some things that I think we need to help the families that are here think about of how do we help them start their own business, because they can't work, but that can help support them. And there's legal ways to do that. So that's one of the things that I learned over time. I haven't dove into enough to create these these channels yet, but it's a possibility to do. So we can think about that as employers as well, if we have workers with those requirements. With that, I do want to give a special thank you to the JBS and the team of bringing your team here and being such a community player and a role, and to help your employees adapt to the community and then share their story today, because it's not a normal ask that somebody comes to you and says, hey, can you bring a team member and share their story? So thank you very much for that. One more item here is, there is this Building Inclusive Workplaces Innovation workshop coming up that's being hosted by a number of community organizations here in Southwest Minnesota. Ann is walking around and handing out a sheet, so it's a little broader, more things included, but wanted to make sure that everybody was aware of that. So, as some of you might not know anything about GreenSeam, and so I just wanted to walk through a couple components here that we wouldn't be possible to do an event like this without what we call our investors. This is our member group that has been supporting GreenSeam for the past 5 years, which had 100% retention on it, and we continue to get some more. Along with this event specifically, we had some grant dollars from the Department of Employment and Economic Development in partnership with Greater Mankato Growth. If folks are looking to get involved, this is with GreenSeam more specifically and directly, we want to offer that this is some of the things that we can provide you. And so how do we build those connections? How do we find these resources? We do a lot of stuff on talent, because we see this as a limiting growth factor in business growth, and so we spend quite a bit of time on that. If you want to get involved, first thing, we want people involved, because we don't know everything about every business, every sector, but we know that pretty much all businesses in southern Minnesota here connect to food and ag somehow. That's what's the driver of our communities in those cases. And so we want to engage. If you want to get involved financially, it's up to you to pick your number. We have $1,000 to $100,000 a year. So you pick. A couple of events I want to touch on. Here's some of our signature events, but I want to talk about the Rural Forum. It's kind of our key event that happens in December 5th, where we have top-level speakers that normally you'd see and think you'd have to go to the Twin Cities for, that we're able to draw and bring to Mankato. So Senior Vice President of AgCo Corporation will be speaking. The Chief Technology Officer of Land O'Lakes will be speaking. Minnesota FFA President. And then we'll have a legislative panel that you can do just what Diane said, is ask some questions, voice your concerns. And so that's happening there. The State of Ag report each year happens, and we need anybody that sees themselves connected to food and ag or community and rural to fill that out, and that happens every year, start at the beginning of the calendar year. And so I think last what I want to mention is we're volunteer driven, and the volunteers are community or business experts, and they're the ones coming up with the ideas of what we should bring to the table to help you as business or community leaders out. Our chair of the talent committee is Leah Bridger. Leah, put your hand up, thank you. So if during the networking you have thoughts or ideas that you liked, you didn't like, or something we should address within the talent realm, please talk to Leah or Holly or myself. But it's truly driven by community, business, and other leaders, as well as Kelsey is on our board and committee, Nathan's on there. So please feel free to talk with those folks. And I think that is it. So thank you all for coming. We're going to have a few refreshments in the back, some wine, some beer, and please just stick around as long as you would like. And thank you for Redwood for being such a gracious host, Ann. So
with that, have a great day.